At dawn, the first light crawls over the ridges of the Andes like a slow-moving fire, turning the stone terraces of Machu Picchu into a glowing staircase suspended between earth and sky. The clouds drift low, wrapping the city in a silver veil, and for a moment it feels less like a ruin and more like a living breath held by the mountains themselves. Nothing stirs except the wind moving through ancient doorways, carrying whispers that sound almost deliberate, as if the stones are trying to remember the voices that once filled these halls. This is not the grandeur of a fallen empire. It is the quiet presence of a place that was never meant to be found, a sanctuary resting above the world with its secrets intact. In this stillness, a strange tension lingers, the sense that the city is watching you as much as you are watching it. The symmetry of the walls, the sharp edges of the cut granite, the terraces wrapping the mountain like green ribbons, all speak of careful planning. Nothing here is accidental. Every line, every shadow, every angle seems designed to hide something deeper. Machu Picchu does not feel like a city abandoned. It feels like a city waiting for those who once guarded it, waiting for the purpose it was built to serve, waiting for someone who understands what it is asking. The mystery begins with a paradox. The Spanish conquered the entire Inca Empire, laying waste to cities, temples, and fortresses across thousands of miles. Yet they never found Machu Picchu. In a region they searched relentlessly, where local populations were forced to reveal hiding places and secret roads, this vast architectural masterpiece remained untouched. Not a single chronicler mentions it. Not one soldier stumbled upon it. How does a city this large, this significant, this close to major Inca routes remain completely invisible to one of the most aggressive imperial machines in history? It is as if someone erased Machu Picchu from the map long before Europeans arrived. As the light grows brighter, the shadows retreat, revealing narrow paths that wrap around cliffs like threads. Some lead nowhere. Some end abruptly at drops that feel intentional, as if designed to confuse outsiders. The more one studies the layout, the more it becomes impossible to believe the city survived by luck alone. The precision in its construction extends beyond engineering. It extends into strategy. The terraces are not just agricultural marvels. They also serve as natural camouflage. From the valley below, the city blends seamlessly into the mountain, its stones matching the color of the bedrock, its outline broken by terraces that mimic natural slopes. You begin to sense that the builders were not only architects but also masters of concealment. The deeper you look, the more the question grows. Who kept this place hidden? Someone must have destroyed trails that once existed. Someone must have guarded the high passes. Someone must have silenced those who knew the way. Machu Picchu did not hide itself. It was hidden, and the guardians who accomplished this feat were so effective, so disciplined, so invisible that their presence survives only in absence. The absence of records, the absence of ruins of conflict, the absence of outsiders. The air thins with altitude, and with it your thoughts sharpen. You imagine the city as it was centuries ago, alive with movement. Priests walking in white garments, the fragrance of burning herbs rising from ritual stones, farmers tending terraces carved into the steepest parts of the mountain. Above all, you imagine figures stationed silently along the ridges, watching the forests, listening for danger, carrying invisible authority. They would have known every bird call, every rustle of leaves, every shift in the wind, guardians whose devotion was not for an emperor alone, but for something older, something sacred. The sky opens fully now, revealing the full shape of the city. Its three sectors, the agricultural terraces, the urban district, and the sacred temples, form a triad that mirrors Inca cosmology. Nothing feels random. Every wall aligns with a celestial event, every temple with a mountain peak that held divine significance. This was a place built for power and silence, a place that required protection from forces beyond the physical. The guardians were not merely soldiers. They were keepers of rituals, astronomical knowledge, and royal secrets. Their duty was not only to defend a location but to preserve a legacy. As you walk through the empty plazas, the echoes of footsteps long gone seem to travel beside you. The emptiness is overwhelming, not because the city lacks life, but because its life feels suspended. You feel as if the inhabitants left only moments ago, stepping behind the terraces, slipping into the clouds, dissolving into the forest before anyone could notice. There is no sense of collapse, no sign of violence, no traces of hasty escape. What remains is intentional, controlled, and serene. The calm left behind by people who believed the world was not ready for them to be found. A thin mist begins to rise again from the valley, curling around the stone walls like a protective veil. The city shifts back into illusion, becoming something half real, half imagined. And in that moment, the central question emerges with more weight than before. Who protected this place so completely that it survived untouched while an empire fell? Who walked these heights, unseen and unheard, ensuring that Machu Picchu would remain a secret until the world was ready to rediscover it? The mountains offer no answer, only silence. But in that silence lies the beginning of a story that refused to fade. A story of guardians who vanished so completely that their existence now hovers between myth and truth. And the deeper we go into the mystery, the more their presence begins to reveal itself, not through what they left behind, but through what they kept hidden for centuries. The deeper one steps into Machu Picchu's carved corridors and sun-drenched terraces, the more a strange realization settles in. This city was not merely remote. It was engineered to be unseen. Everything about its placement, its angles, its orientation toward the sun and the clouds suggests intention rather than isolation. It was crafted with a precision that goes beyond architecture and touches the realm of strategy, as if those who built it were answering a command whispered generations before they were born. Hide a sanctuary in the sky, and make sure only the worthy can find it. From a distance, Machu Picchu melts into the mountain like a mirage. Its walls mimic the color of the surrounding stone. Its terraces soften the silhouette of the structure, shaping it into the mountain's own contours. To the untrained eye, it is indistinguishable from the cliffs around it. The Incas understood the landscape with a mastery so deep it feels intuitive. They carved pathways that followed natural lines, built roofs that blended into rock shadows, and arranged buildings to take advantage of clouds that constantly drift across the ridge. This wasn't simple camouflage, this was landscape artistry used as defense. Standing within the ruins, it becomes easy to believe the place was never meant for crowds or conquerors. The narrow entrances, the sudden rises in terrain, the twisting corridors that reveal sudden drops, all create a sense of controlled passage. Anyone who didn't know the city would find themselves funneled into dead ends, turned around by abrupt stone walls, or blocked by steep terraces with no visible stairway. To the builders, these obstacles were intentional barriers woven into daily life. To any intruder, they would have been disorienting, even dangerous. Yet concealment alone didn't keep Machu Picchu hidden. The trails tell a more powerful story. Ancient paths leading to the citadel show signs of deliberate rerouting and destruction. Sections of road break off abruptly as if cut away, then vanish beneath dense foliage. Some routes believed to once connect Machu Picchu to other important Inca sites stop short of their logical endpoints, as if someone severed their connection on purpose. There's evidence of reconstructed terraces covering old trail entrances, effectively sealing the city behind agricultural layers. Trails that do remain. The Inca Trail, for example, wind through remote, harsh terrain that only those with training and guidance could safely navigate. These were not roads built for armies or traders. They were meant for selective passage. When Spanish forces swept through the Andes, hunting for Inca nobles and hidden strongholds, they relied heavily on indigenous guides. It is here that another layer of mystery emerges. Despite their interrogation of villages and their aggressive efforts to uncover every last refuge, no one ever revealed Machu Picchu's existence. Not a single whisper, not one reluctant slip of the tongue, as if the entire region had collectively chosen to let the city fade into myth. Such silence does not happen by accident. It requires obedience to something ancient, a shared vow, a cultural understanding, or perhaps the influence of a hidden network committed to protecting the site. Inside the ruins are curious architectural decisions that reveal three levels of access: open public spaces, restricted ritual zones, and highly restricted areas accessible only through narrow, hidden passages. Some temples can only be approached from specific angles that obscure their entrances from the main plazas. The layout subtly teaches navigation. Those who know where they are going move effortlessly, while outsiders feel as if the city folds in on itself. This design philosophy mirrors Andean concepts of duality, seen and unseen, upper world and lower world. Machu Picchu was a place where the visible city and the invisible city overlapped, and only certain individuals were allowed to pass between them. As the scale of intentional invisibility becomes clearer, one begins to question the purpose behind such effort. Why hide a city of such monumental importance? Why go to such lengths to ensure its survival as the empire around it crumbled? The disappearance of pathways, the silence of locals, the strategic blending with the mountains, none of these were improvisations made during a crisis. They were part of the city's blueprint from the beginning. The founders expected danger. They anticipated discovery. They prepared defenses that were not walls and weapons, but secrecy and misdirection. These decisions suggest the existence of a group deeply committed to maintaining this concealment, not for days or years, but for generations. A group who knew the rituals, understood the terrain, and controlled the flow of knowledge. They would not have needed titles or uniforms. Their authority came from their function. They were the keepers of the mountain's secret. Whoever they were, the world never left their fingerprints behind, only their results. The sense of intention hangs heavy in every stone. Things that look random begin to align. The terraces that hide entrances, the stairways that face away from the valley, the temples tucked behind ridges, the sudden walls that break paths unexpectedly. Even the natural vegetation seems to have been encouraged to grow in patterns that obscure more than they reveal. Machu Picchu's invisibility was a long-term project, a living camouflage maintained by human hands. To understand the mystery of the vanished guardians, one must begin here, with the recognition that this place was never lost by accident. It was concealed by purpose, concealed so thoroughly that centuries of storms, earthquakes, and empire-wide upheaval could not reveal it. Concealed so completely that even the most determined invaders walked past it without a clue. Concealed so effectively that the world rediscovered it only when its protectors had been gone for generations. And as we peel back this veil of intentional invisibility, we begin to move from the physical mystery to something deeper and far more elusive, the identity of those who made the concealment possible, and the profound reasons they guarded this sanctuary in the sky with such unwavering devotion. The fall of the Inca Empire did not happen in a single moment. It unfolded like a slow tear in the fabric of a world that had once believed itself eternal. Before the Spanish arrived, the empire stretched across mountains, deserts, and jungles. An intricate network of roads, temples, and administrative centers connected by the authority of the Sapa Inca, believed to be the living son of the sun. It was a civilization built on order, ritual, and cosmic alignment. And yet, in the span of a few devastating years, that order was shattered by steel, disease, and betrayal. Cities that had thrived for centuries were emptied or plundered. Priests who had once spoken for the gods found themselves silenced. Generals who once commanded armies of tens of thousands were suddenly fugitives hiding in ravines and mountain passes. Amid this collapse, rumors began to rise. Whispers carried along remote trails, told in hushed voices to avoid Spanish ears. They spoke of a sanctuary in the clouds, a place untouched by fire or conquest, a refuge the invaders would never find. This sanctuary was not just a location. It was a symbol. For the Incas, the mountain world, the Hanan Pasha was sacred. The highest peaks were considered living spirits, guardians of the people. To retreat into the mountains was not to flee. It was to return to a realm of divine protection. As Cusco fell, the royal family and their loyalists scattered in multiple directions. Some sought safe passage into the jungle. Others hid among remote communities. Yet the most persistent legends described a hidden refuge built long before the crisis. A place designed for a moment exactly like this. A final stronghold for the empire's knowledge keepers, priests, chosen women, and elite defenders. It was said to lie above the clouds, invisible to those who did not belong. Machu Picchu fits these legends in ways that are difficult to ignore. Its location alone defies explanation. It sits not on a high peak, but along a narrow ridge surrounded by sheer drops, a place incredibly difficult to access yet perfectly positioned for observation and defense. It was far enough from major Inca centers to remain hidden, yet close enough to serve as a secure refuge should the empire crumble. The architecture reflects this duality. Temples stand beside agricultural terraces, ritual stones beside living quarters. It was a place designed not for expansion but for preservation. A sanctuary where the essence of Inca culture could continue even if the outside world fell apart. Archaeologists have long debated Machu Picchu's purpose. Was it a royal estate? A ceremonial center? A place for astronomical study? But when viewed through the lens of the empire's collapse, a more urgent interpretation emerges. Machu Picchu as a last sanctuary, a spiritual and political ark carrying the empire's most sacred elements. Many structures within the city, including the Temple of the Sun, the Intihuatana stone, and the royal tomb, suggest a level of ritual importance far beyond that of a simple royal retreat. These were places where priests communicated with deities, where astronomical observations guided societal rhythms, where royal ancestors were honored and consulted. In a time of crisis, these traditions would not simply vanish, they would be safeguarded. There are accounts, though fragmented, of groups escaping Cusco and moving toward remote, fortified locations during the initial phase of Spanish invasion. Chroniclers describe messengers running through mountain trails, carrying orders to protect sacred objects and relocate key figures. The most valuable members of Inca society, the ritual priests, the astronomer-priests, the royal lineage, and the women chosen for religious roles, would have been priority evacuees. Their destination had to be a place capable of sustaining a small population long-term, defended by natural barriers, and invisible to outsiders. Machu Picchu, with its terraces, water systems, and sheltered geography, was uniquely suited to this purpose. But the sanctuary was not only physical. It held symbolic weight. The collapse of an empire is not just political, it is spiritual. The Inca rulers believed they maintained harmony between the physical world and the divine. With their authority shattered, the people looked to the mountains for answers. Machu Picchu rises like a hinge point between worlds, a place where rituals could continue without interruption. To maintain such rituals during chaos would have meant preserving hope, identity, and connection to the gods. In this sense, the sanctuary became a lifeline. Yet what truly deepens the mystery is the silence surrounding Machu Picchu during this period. No Spanish chronicle references it. No indigenous informant mentions it in the early years of conquest. This implies not that it was forgotten, but that its existence was intentionally concealed. Those who fled to it, or those who knew of it, may have formed a circle of protection built on loyalty to the Sapa Inca. The sanctuary would be safe only if knowledge of it was restricted to a select group, people who could be trusted to keep the secrets of the heights even if it meant sacrificing their own lives. Walking through the empty remains today, one can almost sense that final generation of inhabitants. They lived with the knowledge that their world had ended, yet they continued their duties, tending terraces, studying the stars, performing rites to hold the cosmic order together. They may have watched distant valleys for signs of Spanish scouts, wondering how long their sanctuary could remain unbroken. And when the time came for them to leave, they left no signs of panic or destruction. They departed with discipline, the same discipline that had kept Machu Picchu hidden during the fall of an empire. In the story of the Incas, Machu Picchu becomes more than a jewel of architecture. It becomes a silent archive of a world that refused to die. It is the embodiment of resilience wrapped in stone. And the mystery grows heavier with each step through its plazas. If this was the last sanctuary of the Inca, then who protected it so fiercely that its existence remained unknown until the world was ready to rediscover it? The disappearance of the empire only deepens the puzzle, and the sanctuary in the clouds holds the next clue. In the final turbulent days before the Spanish conquest consumed the heart of the Inca world, the royal palaces of Cusco became a place of whispered commands and desperate calculations. The Sapa Inca, revered as the living child of Inti, the sun, stood at the center of this unraveling universe, surrounded by advisors, priests, generals, and kin who watched the empire crumble beneath unfamiliar weapons and invisible diseases. Yet even as panic spread across the valleys, there is evidence that the Inca leadership moved with an eerie sense of foresight. They had seen omens in the sky, disruptions in celestial patterns, and signs that foretold upheaval. Long before the Spanish arrived, the empire had prepared for the possibility of catastrophic change. It was during these days of crisis that secret orders were issued, orders that would determine not only who survived, but what knowledge would endure. These directives were not shouted from rooftops or carved into stone. They were spoken quietly, carried through the empire by chasquis, elite runners trained to deliver classified messages across impossible distances. These messengers did not carry scrolls or letters. They carried memorized instructions, encoded through ritual language so that only the intended recipients could understand their meaning. The empire's survival depended not only on military resistance but on the preservation of its spiritual and intellectual core. Somewhere within these final communications, the Sapa Inca commanded certain groups to scatter to predetermined places of refuge. Some were told to protect sacred objects. Others were instructed to guard royal bloodlines. And a select few were ordered to maintain the secrecy of a mountain sanctuary that held unparalleled ritual importance. This sanctuary, though unnamed in surviving accounts, fits the description of Machu Picchu with uncanny precision. Only individuals with specialized knowledge, architects, astronomer-priests, chosen women, and elite warriors, would have been entrusted with such an assignment. Their role was not temporary. They were to safeguard the site for as long as it took for the empire's spirit to rise again, whether in decades, generations, or centuries. Such an order would have required absolute loyalty, perhaps even a willingness to vanish entirely from the documented world. Among the groups believed to have received these secret instructions were the Amautas, the philosopher-scholars who maintained the empire's intellectual traditions. They preserved astronomical knowledge, agricultural techniques, and ritual codes that linked daily life to the rhythms of the cosmos. If Machu Picchu was indeed a sanctuary of knowledge, the Amautas would have been among its protectors. Their disappearance from historical records after the conquest hints at something deliberate, an exodus into silence, perhaps into the mountains. Another group likely involved was the Akla, the chosen women trained in weaving, ritual preparation, and the guardianship of sacred fire. They lived in sequestered houses, selected for purity and discipline. The Spanish noted that entire groups of Akla vanished during the early years of conquest, fleeing into remote regions rather than submit to foreign rule. Their knowledge of ritual purity and spiritual defense could have been essential for maintaining a sanctuary like Machu Picchu in the midst of chaos. Then there were the Inca Royal Guard, an elite corps sometimes described as more spiritual than military. Their dedication to the Sapa Inca bordered on religious devotion. They were trained in secrecy, movement through mountainous terrain, and the protection of sacred routes. If any group was qualified to defend a place like Machu Picchu, it was them. Their loyalty would have been strong enough to follow secret orders without question, even if those orders meant vanishing from history. These commands likely extended beyond individuals to entire families. The Incas understood survival in terms of lineage. Protecting bloodlines meant protecting the future. Thus, the Sapa Inca may have commanded trusted households to relocate to hidden strongholds, carrying with them objects of power, ceremonial vessels, textiles woven with encoded symbols, astronomical instruments, or even fragments of the royal mummies that embodied ancestral authority. Such items would not be entrusted to strangers. They would be guarded by those bound by lineage, oath, and tradition. The intensity of secrecy surrounding these orders can be seen in the Spanish chroniclers' frustration. They noted that certain Inca groups refused to reveal information even under torture, maintaining silence about hidden temples, mountain refuges, and royal treasures. This silence was not one of fear, it was one of obedience. Those who had received direct commands from the Sapa Inca would have considered the protection of sacred places more important than their own survival. If Machu Picchu was among the sanctuaries designated in these final orders, then the people who went there did so with clarity of purpose. They were not fleeing in desperation but fulfilling a duty they believed had cosmic significance. They carried rituals that maintained harmony between the physical world and the divine. They preserved knowledge that had guided the empire's crops, architecture, and celestial alignments. They guarded secrets that the Spanish could never be allowed to possess. What makes this narrative even more compelling is the absence of chaos in Machu Picchu's archaeological record. The city shows no signs of violent abandonment. No broken temples, no burned structures, no hurried escapes. Instead, it feels as though its inhabitants completed their tasks, maintained their rituals, and left only when the orders required them to depart. Their departure was not the result of defeat. It was a strategic withdrawal into the folds of the mountains, taking with them the memory of their mission. These secret orders, whispered through messenger networks and encoded in ritual language, form the hidden framework behind Machu Picchu's survival. They suggest an organized, disciplined intelligence working behind the scenes, guided by loyalty to a fading empire and to a sacred city whose protection mattered more than any crown. And as we look deeper into the patterns of silence and survival, we begin to see the outline of a brotherhood, or perhaps a multi-layered network, tasked with guarding the heights long after the empire fell. Their legacy, though invisible in chronicles, remains etched in the perfect preservation of the sanctuary they protected. Ahead lies the question of who these protectors truly were, and how they operated with such precision that even the most powerful empire of the age never uncovered their secret. The construction of Machu Picchu is one of the most astonishing feats of the Inca civilization, not only for its scale and beauty but for the precision with which it was designed to endure and to conceal. Every stone tells a story of expertise, every terrace a testament to meticulous planning, and every temple a reflection of both spiritual devotion and practical ingenuity. But beyond the obvious craftsmanship lies a subtler mystery. Who were the people capable of building a city so perfectly suited to survival, secrecy, and harmony with nature? They were not ordinary laborers. They were highly trained specialists, a dedicated workforce whose knowledge spanned engineering, astronomy, agriculture, and ritual practice. These were the architects of silence, entrusted with constructing a sanctuary that could withstand time, natural disasters, and even the eyes of invaders. The stonemasons of Machu Picchu were masters of an art that remains baffling to modern engineers. Massive granite blocks, some weighing several tons, were cut with incredible precision, fitted together without mortar in a style known as ashlar masonry. The joints are so exact that even a knife cannot slip between them. This technique allowed the city to survive devastating earthquakes over centuries, yet it also served another purpose: invisibility. The stones are carved to mimic the natural lines and shapes of the surrounding cliffs. From a distance, the city seems to rise organically from the mountain, blending seamlessly with the landscape. Achieving this effect required not only skill with tools but an intimate understanding of the terrain, a knowledge that could only be possessed by those who had spent years, perhaps decades, studying every ridge, every slope, every shadow. Among these specialists were the Amautas, the philosopher-scholars of the Inca world, who combined practical skills with spiritual knowledge. They understood astronomy and mathematics, guiding construction so that buildings aligned with celestial events like solstices and equinoxes. They ensured that temples and observatories could mark critical solar positions, allowing the empire to time agricultural cycles with extraordinary precision. But in Machu Picchu, this knowledge took on a new dimension. It was not merely for agricultural efficiency. It became part of the city's defensive strategy. Alignments with the sun, moon, and stars were subtle signals, guiding the movement of insiders while confusing outsiders who lacked the cultural context. The city itself became a coded landscape, readable only by those initiated into its secret knowledge. The priests and ritual specialists added another layer to this human network. Some were astronomers, tracking the passage of celestial bodies to maintain harmony between the heavens and the earth. Others were guardians of sacred rites, responsible for ceremonies that reinforced social cohesion and spiritual order. Together, they created a framework in which Machu Picchu could function not only as a living city but as a protected spiritual haven. Their work required secrecy and discipline. They would have understood that the city's survival depended on both its physical fortifications and the careful management of knowledge, who knew what and when. Even the agricultural engineers were more than farmers. The terraces of Machu Picchu, which climb impossibly steep slopes, were designed to maximize arable land while preventing erosion. But these terraces also served as natural camouflage, breaking the outline of the city when viewed from the valley below. Water channels and fountains were constructed to provide irrigation and drinking water, but their placement also controlled access and movement through the city. Every detail was both practical and strategic, demonstrating a dual-purpose intelligence that few outsiders could recognize. The designers were not merely builders. They were strategists and protectors, anticipating both natural and human threats. It is likely that this workforce was organized along strict hierarchies, with responsibilities distributed according to skill, knowledge, and loyalty. Each specialist would have known only what was necessary for their task, a system designed to protect the city's secrets. Even within the workforce, secrecy was paramount. Stonemasons may have known how to cut and fit the stones, but they might not have known the astronomical or ritual significance of their placement. Likewise, the priests and astronomers understood the spiritual and strategic purposes but may not have handled the massive stones themselves. This compartmentalization ensured that no single individual could betray the city's secrets, intentionally or accidentally. The entire construction effort functioned as a human firewall, with knowledge distributed carefully and purposefully. Some scholars argue that the scale and precision of Machu Picchu's construction required decades, perhaps even the coordinated effort of generations. If so, the guardianship of knowledge may have been passed down alongside technical skill. Each generation would inherit both the tools and the understanding necessary to maintain the city, preserve its secrecy, and continue its function as a sanctuary. This continuity suggests that the architects of Machu Picchu were not just builders. They were part of a lineage of protectors, individuals trained to safeguard both the physical city and the sacred knowledge it contained. The final piece of the puzzle lies in the coordination between these human specialists and the natural environment. The city was not simply built on the mountain. It was integrated into it. The builders leveraged the terrain to enhance both stability and concealment, carving terraces that mimic natural slopes and aligning pathways that flow naturally with the ridge lines. Even the cloud patterns and seasonal fog would have been taken into account, providing natural cover and further complicating the approach for any uninvited visitors. This integration demonstrates a level of foresight that is staggering, suggesting that the architects were deeply attuned not only to the physical landscape but to the broader ecological and spiritual context in which the city existed. In every stone, terrace, and temple, Machu Picchu carries the signature of these human specialists, the architects of silence who made secrecy, survival, and beauty inseparable. They were guardians before the term was applied, constructing not merely a city, but a fortress of knowledge and devotion. And while the names of these individuals are lost to history, their work speaks across centuries. Machu Picchu was not simply built to be inhabited. It was built to be protected, preserved, and hidden, waiting for those who would come to uncover not only its stones but the invisible legacy of its unseen keepers. The paths that lead to Machu Picchu are as mysterious as the city itself. Today, hikers follow the well-trodden Inca Trail, winding through cloud forests and along steep ridges. But the reality of the ancient approach is far more intricate, perilous, and deliberate. Evidence from archaeology and satellite imaging suggests that the original trails were far more numerous, branching out from distant valleys, crossing hidden passes, and tracing routes that required intimate knowledge of the terrain. Some of these trails were deliberately obscured or destroyed over time, leaving only fragments of what was once a sophisticated network. It becomes clear that the guardians of Machu Picchu did not rely solely on walls or watchtowers for protection. They used the mountains themselves, shaping the paths so that only those initiated in the city's secrets could find their way. Many of these ancient roads, now overgrown or collapsed, show signs of intentional disruption. Terraces cover entrances to paths that would have allowed direct access to the city. In some locations, trails that once appeared to descend gently into valleys end abruptly at cliffs or dense forest, forcing any traveler unfamiliar with the region to turn back. The Inca understood the psychology of navigation. A misstep, a sudden dead end, or an unrecognizable turn could make even the most determined outsider abandon the route. For insiders, however, these traps became markers, silent signals that guided their progress with certainty. The trails themselves were part of the defense system, designed to protect not just the city, but the people, knowledge, and sacred objects within. Oral traditions and indigenous stories hint at even more deliberate measures. Elders speak of silent watchers, figures who moved unseen along the ridges, maintaining trails, covering tracks, and keeping outsiders from discovering the hidden sanctuary. Some accounts describe groups of men and women who lived in isolated mountain huts, acting as intermediaries between the trails and the city. They may have been responsible for clearing or reconstructing paths according to seasonal patterns, ensuring that routes remained accessible for insiders while remaining invisible to the uninitiated. This level of coordination implies a system of guardianship that extended far beyond the city walls, encompassing the surrounding mountains, forests, and rivers. The trails themselves also demonstrate an understanding of geography that borders on genius. They exploit natural contours, following ridgelines that provide both concealment and observation. Approaches from valleys are complicated by sheer drops, hidden switchbacks, and steep ascents that are physically exhausting and disorienting. Even with modern equipment, these routes demand stamina and careful planning. Imagine attempting them in the 16th century with no maps, no compasses, and the threat of hostile forces at every step. It would have been nearly impossible for untrained invaders to navigate successfully without guidance from those who knew the mountains intimately. There is also evidence that some paths were seasonal or intentionally ephemeral. Certain trails would be passable only at specific times of the year, depending on rainfall, snow, or the position of the sun. Water management systems, including drainage channels and aqueducts, were constructed to prevent erosion along essential routes, while other areas were left unstable to discourage exploration. It is as if the mountains themselves were enlisted in the defense of Machu Picchu, with human hands subtly modifying the terrain to shape who could come and go. The city was not simply hidden. It was cloaked in a dynamic, living network of paths that changed with the seasons and with the intentions of its guardians. The Spanish conquistadors, despite their relentless search and ruthless interrogation of locals, never discovered Machu Picchu. They were aware of remote settlements, mountain strongholds, and even secret caches of gold, yet they walked past the city as if it were invisible. The combination of geographic isolation, engineered concealment, and controlled information meant that the trails to the city were a closed system. Only those trained or authorized could navigate them successfully. For centuries, these paths remained the domain of insiders, who understood the subtle cues, the hidden markers, and the silent warnings embedded in the landscape. Every switchback, every ridge, every bend in the trail was a message to those who knew how to read it. Modern researchers have attempted to reconstruct these approaches, using a combination of archaeology, topography, and local knowledge. What emerges is a complex lattice of access points, some used for ceremonial purposes, others for practical transport, and still others that seem deliberately misleading. One miscalculation or misunderstanding could have led to a fatal mistake, emphasizing the critical role of those who maintained these routes. The Guardians' control over access extended far beyond the city, into the mountains themselves, effectively creating a buffer zone in which the sanctuary could exist undisturbed. The deeper one studies these trails, the more it becomes clear that they were a form of passive defense. Unlike walls or weapons, they relied on psychology, geography, and careful planning to deter unwanted visitors. They demanded patience, skill, and knowledge, qualities possessed only by the city's insiders. Those who followed the paths with the proper guidance could move safely and efficiently, while those without would become disoriented, exhausted, and ultimately unable to reach the sanctuary. The trails were living instruments of protection, maintained and monitored by human eyes that could blend seamlessly with the forest, moving silently to erase evidence of passage. In this way, the Inca guardians of Machu Picchu achieved something extraordinary. They did not simply build a city and hope it remained hidden. They orchestrated an entire network of living, breathing defenses. The mountains became their allies, the forest their cloak, and the trails their instruments. Through these measures, Machu Picchu survived the fall of an empire, the intrusion of outsiders, and the relentless passage of time. The city was hidden not by chance but by design, and the trails themselves serve as a testament to the discipline, foresight, and dedication of those who vowed to protect the heights. The story of these trails is more than a tale of engineering. It is a story of guardianship, strategy, and human devotion. Every winding path, every concealed entrance, every deceptive turn is a silent record of the invisible protectors who ensured that Machu Picchu remained untouchable for centuries, waiting patiently for a world that was not yet ready to see it. Among the terraces and temples of Machu Picchu, a series of enigmatic carvings and sculptures catch the eye: stone figures, abstract shapes, and human-like forms that seem almost alive, even after centuries of exposure to wind, rain, and sun. These are not mere decorative flourishes. They hint at a deeper purpose, a message encoded in granite for those capable of understanding it. Archaeologists have long noted that some carvings appear to represent warriors or protectors, often positioned near strategic points. Narrow stairways, terraces leading to sacred zones, or ridges overlooking the valleys below. The subtle placement of these figures suggests that they were intended not only to inspire awe but to convey a warning, a silent presence that would be understood by insiders while remaining invisible to casual observers. Could these stone guardians be more than symbolic? Could they reflect the very people who once protected the city from discovery, invisible yet omnipresent in their watch? The warrior-like figures are particularly intriguing. They appear carved in poses of vigilance, sometimes holding indistinct implements or standing in front of entrances. Their faces are abstract, with geometric stylization, yet the posture conveys readiness, a sense of alertness frozen in stone. They are placed near the edge of terraces and along staircases that connect different levels of the city, subtly guiding movement through the complex. To modern eyes, this may seem purely aesthetic, yet in a culture that infused every act with symbolic meaning, these carvings may have functioned as a silent testament to a living guard, an eternal reminder of duty and vigilance. The Incas were masters of visual language, capable of encoding social, spiritual, and practical instructions into stone. These figures could have been both warning and guide, a signal to insiders of the presence of guardians, whether human or divine. In addition to human-like figures, Machu Picchu is dotted with carvings of animals that carry symbolic significance: llamas, condors, serpents, and pumas. The Inca believed that these animals were sacred, embodying aspects of the cosmos and the natural world. The puma, for instance, symbolizes strength and protection, while the condor represents the upper world and spiritual vision. By integrating these figures into the city's architecture, the builders may have been creating a dual layer of protection. One physical, rooted in terrain and construction, and one symbolic, invoking the watchful eyes of sacred creatures. This intertwining of the practical and the mystical reflects a worldview in which the guardianship of the city was as much spiritual as it was human. The placement of these carvings is no accident. Many are positioned along sightlines or near vantage points that provide sweeping views of the surrounding mountains and valleys. From these positions, an observer could monitor access routes without being seen. This leads to a fascinating possibility. Some of the carvings may represent the actual members of a protective order, immortalized in stone as a form of both homage and instruction. The Incas were meticulous record-keepers in both practical and symbolic terms. They may have chosen to encode the identities or roles of their guardians into these figures, preserving the memory of those who once walked the terraces, watched the ridges, and maintained the secrecy of the city. Beyond their protective function, these figures may also have served as psychological deterrents. Outsiders who glimpsed these abstract shapes could feel the presence of unseen watchers, creating unease or hesitation. It is easy to imagine Spanish scouts or rival tribes encountering these forms in low light or fog, interpreting them as signs of a hidden force, ready to defend the city. Even without understanding the full meaning, the impression of vigilance would have been enough to reinforce the city's secrecy. In this way, the carvings acted as an extension of the guardians themselves, a silent layer of protection that complemented the human and geographic defenses of Machu Picchu. Some of the carvings suggest ceremonial use as well. Figures are often placed near temples, ritual spaces, or astronomical markers, implying that the guardianship of Machu Picchu was not purely martial but intertwined with spiritual duties. Those who protected the city may have served dual roles, maintaining its physical security and performing rituals that ensured the harmony and continuity of sacred practices. The guardians may have been astronomers, priests, or warrior priests, individuals trained in both the material and spiritual sciences, blending discipline with devotion in a way that remains almost incomprehensible today. This dual function, practical and symbolic, reinforces a broader truth about Machu Picchu. It was a city designed to be protected on multiple levels simultaneously. Physical barriers, concealed trails, watchful ridges, and symbolic carvings all worked together to create an environment that was extraordinarily difficult to penetrate. The presence of these figures suggests that protection was not limited to those who walked the terraces. It extended into the very stones themselves, embedding vigilance into the architecture and landscape. Every visitor, whether insider or outsider, would be subtly influenced by these cues, moving with caution or following instructions encoded in the placement of the carvings. Ultimately, these white granite guardians serve as a silent testament to the individuals who once inhabited the city. They hint at the existence of a human network, a protective caste that ensured Machu Picchu remained hidden from the outside world. The carvings may be the only evidence that survives of those invisible sentinels, watchers whose names have been lost, whose deeds were never recorded, but whose presence continues to echo in stone. They are a message across centuries. Machu Picchu was not merely built to be admired. It was built to be protected, and every figure, every angle, every carefully placed stone carries the weight of that enduring vigilance. In this way, the city speaks through the carvings, whispering the story of unseen guardians, a secret encoded in stone, waiting for those who know how to see, to recognize, and perhaps to imagine the people who once walked its heights, keeping the sanctuary alive with their unwavering devotion. The water systems of Machu Picchu are as astonishing as the terraces, temples, and stone walls. Rivers and streams carved through the mountains long before the city existed. Yet the builders harnessed this natural force with extraordinary ingenuity. Every fountain, channel, and drainage system is not only a feat of engineering but also a testament to the city's dual purpose: sustenance and secrecy. The flowing water, carefully managed and channeled through the terraces, served to nourish crops, prevent erosion, and provide drinking water, while simultaneously acting as a subtle mechanism for concealment. Water was not merely a resource, it was part of the architecture of protection. The most famous example is the system of fountains located in the sacred plaza. Water flows continuously through carved stone channels, emerging from rock faces with precision and grace. These fountains are aligned with sacred structures and ritual spaces, suggesting that they were as much ceremonial as practical. The sound of water trickling through the city would have masked the movement of people, covering footsteps and making it difficult for intruders to determine the exact number or location of inhabitants. It is a brilliant combination of function and strategy, life-giving water that also conceals activity. This dual purpose reflects the mindset of Machu Picchu's protectors. Every element had multiple layers of meaning and utility. Terraces, often celebrated for their agricultural brilliance, were equally vital to the city's defensive strategy. Constructed with layers of stone, sand, and fertile soil, they prevented landslides in a region prone to heavy rainfall and seismic activity. Yet these terraces also acted as camouflage, breaking up the silhouette of the city when viewed from the valleys below. Paths and small stairways were concealed within these terraces, allowing insiders to move freely while remaining unseen. Water channels running alongside or beneath these terraces provided irrigation but also served to obscure entrances, making the city nearly invisible to outsiders. The combination of terraces and water systems is a masterclass in controlled visibility, a deliberate design by those who understood the art of concealment as deeply as the science of agriculture. Some channels are constructed in ways that appear almost mystical. Water emerges from natural springs, travels along gravity-fed aqueducts, and then disappears into carved drains or stone basins with perfect precision. These systems required careful monitoring and maintenance. Too little water and crops would fail. Too much and terraces could collapse. This necessity gave the guardians of Machu Picchu a constant task, ensuring that the city remained functional, hidden, and prepared for any threat. Maintaining the water system was not merely about survival. It was a sacred duty, one intertwined with the city's spiritual and protective purpose. The Spanish chroniclers, despite their meticulous accounts of the Inca world, never mention these systems. They marveled at other cities, temples, and gold, but Machu Picchu's combination of isolation, terraces, and water management remained untouched, unseen, and unheard. This absence in historical records further emphasizes the effectiveness of its protection. It was not enough for the city to be well-built. It had to be invisible. And the water systems were crucial to this invisibility, ensuring that the movement of people within the city left no trace and that the terraces appeared as natural extensions of the mountainside. Even the distribution of fountains and channels suggests ritual significance. Water emerges at points of ceremonial importance, near temples, plazas, and observatories, indicating that those who maintained it were also custodians of sacred practices. The water was life, yes, but it was also a tool for ritual purification, a symbol of continuity, and a medium through which the spiritual and physical aspects of the city were intertwined. In this sense, the guardians of Machu Picchu were not merely engineers or farmers. They were stewards of both life and tradition, ensuring that the city functioned as a fully integrated sanctuary. Maintenance of these water systems would have required knowledge, vigilance, and dedication. Channels had to be cleared, terraces reinforced, and fountains kept unobstructed. It is likely that the guardians assigned to this task were trained in both practical engineering and ritual practice. They understood the importance of precision, for even a small failure could compromise both agriculture and concealment. In this way, the city's very survival depended on a network of human custodians, working quietly, invisibly, yet ceaselessly, to ensure that every drop of water served its dual purpose. The ingenuity of Machu Picchu's water management demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of the interplay between nature and human habitation. It reflects the broader philosophy of the city, that every element, whether stone, plant, or stream, was part of a larger system designed to sustain life, preserve knowledge, and maintain secrecy. Water was not simply a resource. It was a guardian, flowing through the city like an invisible sentinel, shielding the movements of those who kept the city alive while obscuring it from the outside world. In this way, the rivers, fountains, and channels of Machu Picchu are silent witnesses to the skill, foresight, and devotion of its protectors. They reveal a civilization capable of blending function with strategy, practicality with secrecy, and survival with spirituality. The water systems are more than engineering marvels. They are living proof of the ingenuity and unwavering dedication of the people who ensured that Machu Picchu remained hidden, functional, and sacred, even as the empire around it fell apart. The guardians were not simply keeping a city. They were orchestrating a complex, flowing, living defense that allowed the sanctuary to endure for centuries, waiting for a time when the world could finally behold it. The terraces of Machu Picchu rise in dramatic steps along the mountainside, a testament to the Incas' agricultural genius and their deep understanding of the Andean environment. But these terraces were more than just functional farmland. They were carefully engineered defensive tools, serving multiple purposes that contributed to the city's survival and secrecy. Each layer of stone, soil, and vegetation was designed to prevent erosion, manage water flow, and create a landscape that confounded outsiders. The terraces are living evidence of a civilization that thought in layers, not just physically, but strategically and symbolically. The terraces begin at the base of the mountain and extend upward, each one carefully leveled and reinforced. Engineers incorporated a multi-layered system of drainage. Large stones at the bottom, followed by sand and gravel, then fertile soil for crops. This construction prevented landslides in a region prone to heavy rain and earthquakes, ensuring the city's long-term stability. But it also had a subtler purpose. By creating uneven, stepped surfaces, the builders broke the visual continuity of the mountainside. From a distance, the city blends seamlessly with the natural contours of the ridge. A casual observer cannot discern terraces from cliff, nor buildings from boulders. This camouflage made Machu Picchu almost invisible to any passerby, a city cloaked by both human ingenuity and nature itself. Within the terraces, pathways and stairways were carefully integrated, allowing controlled access to different levels of the city. Insiders could move with ease, guided by knowledge of hidden entrances and subtle markers, while outsiders would struggle to navigate the steep, winding, and sometimes dead-ending routes. Some terraces hide staircases or narrow corridors that lead to sacred spaces, allowing only those familiar with the city's layout to pass. These routes served as both physical and psychological barriers, creating the impression that Machu Picchu was an impassable cliff rather than a functioning city. In this way, the terraces themselves became a strategic tool, guiding movement, concealing activity, and protecting the sanctuary. The choice of crops grown on these terraces also demonstrates the strategic thinking of the city's planners. Maize, potatoes, quinoa, and other high-altitude staples were cultivated in a manner that optimized both yield and concealment. Some terraces may have been intentionally left overgrown or planted in patterns that obscured stairways and channels, effectively blending utility with secrecy. The crops were more than sustenance. They were part of a broader system of survival, maintained by guardians who understood both agriculture and the art of hiding. Every harvest, every irrigation decision, and every season of planting was executed with precision, ensuring the city remained livable while remaining invisible to outsiders. The terraces also reflect a spiritual dimension. In Inca cosmology, the earth itself was sacred, and cultivation was not merely practical. It was a form of communication with the gods. By constructing terraces that followed the natural contours of the mountain, the builders honored the land and maintained balance between the physical and spiritual worlds. The terraces became a living interface between human ingenuity and the divine, a place where food, survival, and sacred duty intersected. For the guardians of Machu Picchu, tending these terraces was both a practical necessity and a sacred responsibility, reinforcing the city's role as a sanctuary not only of life but of belief and knowledge. Some terraces appear to have had dual purposes, combining agriculture with concealment or ritual function. Certain platforms may have served as viewing points, observation posts, or ceremonial stages. Others were designed to hide water channels, staircases, or storage areas. The multifunctional nature of these terraces demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of design. Nothing was accidental, and every element had layered purposes. It is likely that the people maintaining these terraces were highly trained specialists, individuals capable of interpreting the subtle language of the city and carrying out tasks that preserved both its physical integrity and its secrecy. The terraces, in essence, form a network of living defense mechanisms. They are difficult to traverse, confusing to outsiders, and nearly invisible from a distance. They channel water, sustain crops, and conceal movement, all while reinforcing the spiritual harmony of the site. Each terrace is an expression of the guardian's skill and foresight, a deliberate integration of utility, camouflage, and sacred symbolism. The city's survival over centuries, despite natural disasters and the collapse of the surrounding empire, is a testament to the effectiveness of this system. Moreover, the terraces serve as a metaphor for the guardianship itself. Just as the terraces support the city physically, the protectors supported Machu Picchu conceptually, ensuring that knowledge, ritual, and security were maintained. Both terraces and guardians were part of a living system, interconnected and mutually reinforcing. The terraces hid the city in plain sight, just as the guardians hid themselves while maintaining watch. Their work was never seen by outsiders, yet it was essential for the city's endurance. Through the terraces, the genius of Machu Picchu becomes clear. The city was not simply a settlement but a fortified sanctuary, where every layer of stone and soil contributed to survival, secrecy, and sanctity. The terraces are more than agricultural marvels. They are the silent testimony of those who understood the mountains, the skies, and the divine order, and who dedicated themselves to protecting a city that would remain hidden, inviolate, and eternal for generations. In this light, Machu Picchu is not just a marvel of Inca engineering. It is a testament to human ingenuity, devotion, and the invisible hand of guardians who ensured that the sanctuary endured beyond the reach of empire, conquest, and time itself. The temples of Machu Picchu rise like silent sentinels above the terraces, each one carefully placed to reflect a precise understanding of both the physical and spiritual worlds. The most famous, the the Temple of the Sun, is constructed from massive stones meticulously carved to fit together without mortar, forming curved walls that align perfectly with the solstice sun. At the winter solstice, sunlight passes through a carefully positioned window and illuminates a specific stone, creating a celestial signal that likely marked the beginning of sacred ceremonies. This alignment is no accident. It reveals an advanced knowledge of astronomy, architecture, and ritual, a combination that underscores the city's dual purpose as a place of devotion and protection. The temples were not merely religious centers. They were also repositories of knowledge. Priest astronomers observed the heavens from these structures, recording celestial patterns and correlating them with agricultural cycles. These observations guided planting and harvesting, dictated ceremonial schedules, and reinforced the harmony between the natural and spiritual worlds. Machu Picchu's temples, positioned with extraordinary precision, allowed the guardians to maintain this sacred rhythm even during the empire's collapse. Inside, the walls and floors may have contained subtle markers, carvings, or alignments designed to communicate information to the initiated, a kind of encoded knowledge that only those trained in Inca astronomy and ritual could decipher. Other temples, like the Temple of the Three Windows, serve as a powerful reminder of the intersection between architecture and symbolism. The three windows, perfectly framed and facing eastward, may represent the three levels of Inca cosmology: the underworld, the earthly realm, and the heavens. To outsiders, these windows appear decorative or architectural. To the guardians and priests, they were spiritual and instructional tools, reminding all who entered of the balance that must be maintained between worlds. Rituals performed within these spaces were not mere ceremonies. They were acts of preservation, reinforcing both cosmic harmony and the city's secrecy. The guardians understood that the spiritual well-being of Machu Picchu was inseparable from its physical security. The positioning of temples also allowed for surveillance and control. Many temples occupy elevated locations overlooking terraces, plazas, and access points. From these vantage points, insiders could monitor movement across the city without being seen, maintaining order and observing any unusual activity. The lines of sight were carefully calculated, allowing the city's guardians to maintain a presence across multiple levels simultaneously. These elevated positions also reinforced the psychological aspect of protection. Anyone entering or navigating the city would feel the weight of observation, the presence of unseen watchers embedded in both stone and landscape. Rituals performed in these temples likely had dual purposes. They were meant to honor the gods, yes, but also to sustain the city's sanctity and concealment. Priests may have performed rites intended to align spiritual forces with the mountains, rivers, and valleys surrounding Machu Picchu. Such rituals would serve as both spiritual guardianship and practical warning. The city was not a place to be approached lightly. The guardians, in turn, would be reinforced by these ceremonies, understanding that their vigilance was sanctioned by divine order. In this way, the temples were active participants in the protection of Machu Picchu, not simply passive structures. The interior spaces of the temples reveal further layers of intent. Carved niches, trapezoidal doors, and finely fitted stones suggest that certain areas were restricted, accessible only to those initiated in the city's spiritual and protective systems. Objects of power, ceremonial vessels, offerings, and perhaps astronomical instruments were likely stored within these restricted areas, closely guarded by those entrusted with the city's secrets. The placement of such items would have reinforced both hierarchy and control, ensuring that only the most trusted individuals could interact with the sacred objects and understand their function. The spiritual and practical significance of the temples converges most clearly in their connection to Machu Picchu's water systems. Many fountains and channels are located near or beneath sacred structures, implying a deliberate integration of ritual, utility, and concealment. Water flowing near temples served multiple purposes: sustaining the city, symbolizing purification, masking movement, and marking pathways for insiders. The guardians had to understand the complex interrelation of water, stone, and ritual to maintain both life and secrecy. In this way, the temples were nodes in a larger network of protection, blending engineering, ritual, and strategy into a unified system. Even the choice of materials and construction techniques reflects a concern for longevity and discretion. Stones were quarried from local sources and shaped with precision, ensuring stability in an earthquake-prone region. The same stones were positioned to blend with the natural rock formations, rendering the temples nearly invisible from certain vantage points. The construction was meticulous, yet it served a dual purpose: to glorify the gods and to conceal the city from potential invaders. Every choice in design, alignment, and placement reflects the dual mandate of the guardians: preservation and protection. Ultimately, the temples of Machu Picchu represent more than religious devotion. They are a record of strategy, intelligence, and foresight. They demonstrate a civilization capable of integrating spiritual, practical, and protective concerns into structures that have endured for centuries. The guardians of the city understood that survival required more than walls and terraces. It required embedding secrecy, vigilance, and sacred knowledge into every stone and chamber. Through these temples, we see a city alive with purpose, a sanctuary where devotion and defense were inseparable, and where the unseen protectors left a legacy that would remain hidden until the world was ready to rediscover it. The residential sectors of Machu Picchu reveal a level of planning, organization, and discipline that speaks to the lives of its inhabitants, particularly those entrusted with guarding the city. These living quarters were not simple homes. They were carefully arranged spaces that balanced functionality, hierarchy, and concealment. The city was divided into sectors with housing for priests, chosen women, military guardians, and administrative personnel, each allocated according to duty and skill. The layout of these dwellings reflects the social and operational structure of the sanctuary. Everyone had a role, and every role contributed to the preservation of the city's secrets. The residents lived with constant awareness that the survival of Machu Picchu depended on their vigilance, knowledge, and loyalty. The houses themselves were small but ingeniously designed. Many are trapezoidal in shape, a distinctive Inca architectural style that provides stability in earthquake-prone terrain. Stone walls were fitted with precision, some featuring niches and recesses for storage of food, ceremonial objects, or tools. Roofs, now gone, were likely made from thatch, carefully layered to resist rainfall and wind. Some dwellings were clustered along narrow terraces, with access through discrete stairways, creating a labyrinthine layout that facilitated movement for insiders while confusing outsiders. It is clear that privacy, security, and efficiency were all considered in the design. Every home was part of a broader system, contributing to the city's concealment while sustaining its inhabitants. The organization of the residential areas also indicates a high degree of discipline. Rooms were arranged to separate sleeping quarters from work areas, ceremonial spaces, and storage zones. Some quarters were reserved for those responsible for maintaining the terraces, water systems, and temples, ensuring that critical infrastructure was constantly monitored. Others were allocated to priestly or ritual personnel, who had the task of preserving knowledge, conducting ceremonies, and reinforcing spiritual harmony. This division of labor reflects a society in which every individual's role was clearly defined, creating a network of caretakers whose efforts were coordinated with precision. Certain residential clusters suggest that the guardians of Machu Picchu lived in close proximity to the city's most sensitive areas. For example, dwellings near temples or observation points were likely reserved for priest astronomers or warrior priests, individuals tasked with maintaining ritual practices and overseeing the safety of the sanctuary. Other clusters, positioned near terraces or agricultural zones, housed those responsible for food production, terrace maintenance, and water management. This deliberate placement allowed the city to function smoothly, with the guardian's presence integrated into every layer of the urban landscape. Proximity was not random. It reflected the importance of role, responsibility, and access to the tools of protection. The lifestyle of the inhabitants also underscores their dedication to the city's mission. Archaeological evidence indicates careful diet management, with stored grains, tubers, and other high-altitude crops suggesting long-term planning and resource preservation. Tools for maintenance, ritual implements, and personal items were organized to maximize efficiency while minimizing exposure. There is no evidence of opulent or ostentatious living. Instead, the focus was on functionality, sustainability, and readiness. Every action, from preparing food to tending terraces, would have been performed with the understanding that Machu Picchu's survival depended on discipline, secrecy, and coordination. Even the arrangement of pathways and stairways between dwellings demonstrates an intricate understanding of movement and security. Narrow corridors, concealed entrances, and terraces that curve around natural features created a city that was easy to navigate for insiders but highly confusing for outsiders. The guardians could move quickly, unseen, while any intruder would struggle to discern the correct paths. The residential layout thus functioned as both a living space and a strategic component of the city's defense system. The very act of inhabiting Machu Picchu was part of its protection. The residents themselves were living sentinels. Social structure within these residential areas was also carefully maintained. Cohesion, loyalty, and obedience were essential. The guardians were likely trained from a young age, steeped in the rituals, knowledge, and responsibilities that define their role. Hierarchical arrangements, observed in the placement of houses and ceremonial spaces, reinforced both authority and accountability. Those entrusted with sacred knowledge or critical functions were positioned to maintain oversight, while others supported their work through complementary duties. This organized society ensured that Machu Picchu could operate efficiently, even in isolation, with each resident contributing to a shared mission that transcended personal comfort or recognition. The residential quarters also hint at the blending of daily life with spiritual purpose. Living near temples, terraces, or fountains meant that inhabitants were constantly reminded of the city's sacred and protective functions. Routine tasks, collecting water, tending crops, maintaining structures, were imbued with ritual significance. Every movement within the city was part of a larger rhythm, reinforcing harmony, vigilance, and secrecy. In this sense, Machu Picchu was more than a sanctuary. It was a living organism, sustained by the disciplined actions of those who understood its sacred mission. Finally, the residential sectors provide insight into the human element behind the city's endurance. While the architecture, water systems, terraces, and temples reflect technical genius, the people who inhabited these spaces were the true guardians. Their lives were defined by duty, knowledge, and loyalty. They carried the responsibility of preserving the city, maintaining secrecy, and ensuring that Machu Picchu could withstand the collapse of an empire. Every carefully placed stone, every cultivated terrace, and every controlled movement within the city was a testament to the vigilance, skill, and devotion of these unseen protectors. Through these residential areas, we see the invisible network that enabled Machu Picchu to survive centuries of isolation, natural threats, and human ignorance. The city was not simply a collection of stone structures. It was a living sanctuary, maintained by people whose dedication transformed it into a hidden fortress of knowledge, spirituality, and survival. The residential quarters are a silent record of these guardians, preserving the legacy of those who lived and labored with unwavering commitment, ensuring that the sanctuary endured long after the empire itself had fallen. The ritual spaces of Machu Picchu provide some of the clearest insights into the spiritual and protective purpose of the city. While terraces and temples reveal engineering and astronomical prowess, the plazas, ceremonial stones, and sunken courts demonstrate the centrality of ritual practice in maintaining both harmony and secrecy. These spaces were not merely symbolic. They were functional instruments of order, designed to guide the behavior, perception, and movement of those who lived and worked in the city. The guardians of Machu Picchu understood that protection was as much about ritual and discipline as it was about walls and concealment. Every ceremony performed, every offering made, and every alignment of stone carried multiple layers of meaning, intertwining spiritual devotion with strategic foresight. The main ceremonial plaza, situated at the heart of the city, was the center of communal life, yet it was carefully organized to control access and influence perception. The plaza's terraces and steps create a natural amphitheater, guiding the gaze and movement of those within it. Observers would find their attention drawn to key features: a temple aligned with the rising sun, a sacred rock with carved niches, or fountains channeling the mountain's water into ritual flows. This choreography of space ensured that participants were always aware of the city's sacred order, reinforcing their role as custodians of both spiritual and physical protection. The plaza was more than a gathering space. It was a teaching ground, an arena where knowledge, hierarchy, and duty were reinforced through practice. Several carved stones, or huacas, are positioned strategically throughout these ceremonial zones. These stones often depict abstract forms, geometric patterns, or representations of sacred animals such as the condor, puma, or serpent. They were not mere decoration. They encoded knowledge about cosmology, ritual, and perhaps even city defense. By observing and interacting with these stones, the guardians internalized lessons about vigilance, harmony, and the balance between visible and hidden worlds. The placement of these stones along key sightlines, near terraces or stairways, also meant that they functioned as markers for movement within the city. An outsider unfamiliar with the symbolic language would see only stone. An insider would recognize a system of guidance and protection encoded into the landscape itself. Sunken courts and ritual platforms further illustrate the dual function of these spaces. Depressions carved into bedrock, often surrounded by terraces or ritual stones, may have been used for offerings, astronomical observations, or initiation ceremonies. Their placement within the city suggests careful consideration of sightlines, acoustics, and access control. Participants in these ceremonies would gain a direct experience of Machu Picchu's layered design, both spiritual and strategic, reinforcing the sense that the city itself was alive, watching, and guiding behavior. The guardians were not simply performing rituals. They were participating in a living system, one that reinforced the protection and secrecy of the sanctuary while maintaining the spiritual balance of the community. The positioning of ceremonial spaces relative to natural features, mountain peaks, rivers, and cliffs, reflects a sophisticated understanding of the landscape. These spaces were intentionally oriented to draw energy from sacred mountains, align with solar events, and take advantage of natural vantage points. This integration of natural and built environments meant that rituals were not isolated acts but were connected to the larger world, reinforcing the city's alignment with cosmic and terrestrial forces. Guardians, trained to recognize these connections, were able to maintain the integrity of the city while subtly guiding others in its use and interpretation. Some scholars suggest that these ritual spaces also functioned as training grounds for those charged with protecting Machu Picchu. Initiates may have learned to interpret celestial events, track changes in water flow, or read the symbolic language of stones and carvings. They would practice movement through the terraces, learn the hidden stairways, and internalize the city's secret signals. In this way, rituals were both spiritual and practical. They ensured continuity of sacred practice while embedding practical knowledge about navigation, observation, and city defense. The act of ritual became inseparable from the act of guardianship. The soundscape of these ceremonial areas further enhanced their function. Flowing water, wind through terraces, and echoes across plazas created an environment that reinforced focus, discipline, and awareness. The acoustics could amplify chants, mark the passage of time, or mask movement, serving both ceremonial and protective functions. Guardians would have understood how to use sound to communicate subtly or to maintain control over the space, ensuring that outsiders could not interpret what they observed. Every sensory experience, the sight of the mountains, the alignment of stones, the sound of water, was carefully orchestrated to reinforce both secrecy and sanctity. Even today, the energy of these ritual spaces is palpable. Archaeologists, historians, and visitors note the sense of order, reverence, and deliberate guidance embedded in every corner. The plazas and ceremonial zones speak to a culture in which spiritual practice, city planning, and guardianship were inseparable. Machu Picchu was not merely a city. It was a living sanctuary, maintained through disciplined ritual, careful observation, and a deep understanding of the interplay between humans, landscape, and cosmos. Through the ceremonial spaces, we glimpse the invisible network of guardians whose daily lives were entwined with sacred duty. Their rituals reinforced vigilance, secrecy, and knowledge, creating a city that was both spiritually alive and practically protected. Machu Picchu's sanctity and concealment were inseparable, preserved through generations of disciplined guardians who understood that every ceremony, stone, and channel contributed to the enduring secrecy and survival of this extraordinary mountain sanctuary. The astronomical knowledge embedded in Machu Picchu reveals a civilization profoundly attuned to the rhythms of the heavens, a culture in which observation of the stars, sun, and moon was inseparable from survival, ritual, and protection. The guardians of the city were not only engineers, farmers, and priests. They were astronomers, trained to read the sky with precision and to translate celestial patterns into practical and spiritual guidance. Their work ensured that the city functioned in harmony with the cosmos, that agricultural cycles were accurately timed, and that sacred ceremonies occurred at the exact moment when cosmic forces were believed to be aligned. Astronomy, in this sense, was both a tool and a weapon. It guided the daily life of the city while reinforcing its secrecy and spiritual authority. The Intihuatana stone, often referred to as the hitching post of the sun, is the most famous example of this astronomical sophistication. Carved from a single piece of granite and precisely aligned with the cardinal points, the stone served as a solar clock and calendar. At the equinoxes, the sun's shadow touches the stone in a specific way, signaling critical agricultural and ceremonial dates. The guardians would have relied on this knowledge to orchestrate planting, harvesting, and the timing of sacred rituals. The precision required to achieve such alignment demonstrates not only technical skill, but also an intimate understanding of the sun's path across the sky, knowledge accumulated over generations and closely guarded within the city. Beyond the Intihuatana, multiple structures in Machu Picchu demonstrate deliberate alignment with celestial events. The Temple of the Sun, for example, has windows positioned to capture the solstice sun, illuminating specific stones or chambers at precise moments. These alignments were not decorative, they were practical signals. For guardians and priests, the movement of light through these temples served as a temporal guide, coordinating daily tasks, rituals, and the observation of the surrounding environment. The city itself became a living observatory, integrating human activity with cosmic rhythms to create a seamless network of knowledge and control. The stars, too, played a critical role. Certain plazas and terraces appear to have been designed to track the movement of important constellations, enabling the guardians to anticipate seasonal changes and predict weather patterns. This knowledge was vital not only for agriculture but for maintaining the city's concealment. By understanding the cycles of rain, fog, and sun, the guardians could plan movements, rituals, and maintenance activities to coincide with optimal conditions. In effect, astronomy became a strategic tool, allowing Machu Picchu to operate efficiently and secretly within the challenging Andean environment. Observations of the moon and planets added another layer of sophistication. The Incas were keenly aware of lunar cycles, which influenced agricultural planning, ceremonial timing, and spiritual interpretation. Certain structures may have functioned as sightlines or markers for tracking lunar phases, enabling the guardians to anticipate natural cycles with precision. This knowledge reinforced their authority within the city, as only those trained in celestial observation could interpret the signals correctly. Outsiders, unaware of the astronomical significance of stone placements or temple alignments, would miss the hidden order that governed every aspect of Machu Picchu's functioning. The guardians likely passed this knowledge through structured training and ritual practice. Young initiates may have been taught to observe, record, and interpret celestial events, gradually internalizing the city's rhythms. This training would have been essential not only for maintaining the agricultural calendar but for safeguarding the city's secrets. Certain alignments may have acted as signals, guiding movement along hidden paths, marking entrances, or indicating when rituals should occur. In this sense, astronomy was a language, and the guardians were fluent speakers, using the heavens to communicate instructions and maintain the city's security. Even the seemingly mundane aspects of the city reveal astronomical awareness. Water channels, terraces, and stairways often align with sightlines that connect to celestial markers, subtly integrating the landscape into the city's cosmic framework. Movement through the city could be timed according to the position of the sun, ensuring that insiders remained coordinated while outsiders remained unaware of the hidden rhythms. The city itself functioned as a three-dimensional calendar, a living machine in which stone, sky, and human activity were synchronized for survival, concealment, and ritual observance. In addition, the Guardians appear to have encoded astronomical knowledge into the very stones and layout of Machu Picchu. Trapezoidal windows, niches, and carved markers may have served as observation points, while specific alignments acted as teaching tools for initiates. The network of Guardians maintained and interpreted these signals, preserving centuries of accumulated wisdom while ensuring that it remained hidden from outsiders. Astronomy, therefore, was both a practical necessity and a form of coded communication, reinforcing the city's role as a sanctuary and a secret stronghold. Ultimately, the astronomical design of Machu Picchu highlights the extraordinary foresight of its creators. The Guardians were not only protectors of a physical city, they were custodians of knowledge, capable of reading the sky, predicting natural cycles, and orchestrating human activity in harmony with cosmic rhythms. Their understanding of astronomy ensured the survival of the city, the success of its agriculture, and the sanctity of its rituals, while simultaneously preserving its concealment. The stars, sun, and moon became instruments of guardianship, and Machu Picchu stands as a testament to a civilization that wove celestial intelligence into the very fabric of its sanctuary. Through these astronomical practices, we see that Machu Picchu was far more than an architectural marvel. It was a living, functioning system, guided by the movement of the heavens and maintained by human custodians who understood that survival, secrecy, and spirituality were inseparable. The celestial knowledge embedded in the city is silent evidence of the unseen guardians, whose devotion and foresight ensured that Machu Picchu would endure, hidden in plain sight, for centuries. The defensive strategies of Machu Picchu extend far beyond stone walls, hidden trails, and terraces. They are embedded in the very psychology of the city's design. Every element of the sanctuary, its architecture, landscape, and orientation, was crafted to control perception, confound outsiders, and empower those who understood its secrets. The Guardians, trained in both physical defense and subtle deception, relied on an intricate combination of visibility, invisibility, and strategic placement. They understood that true security did not come from sheer force alone, but from manipulating how the city was approached, experienced, and perceived. The first line of defense was the terrain itself. Machu Picchu occupies a ridge between the peaks of Machu Picchu and Huayna Picchu, surrounded by steep cliffs on nearly all sides. These natural barriers limited access and made direct assault nearly impossible. But the Guardians went further, enhancing the inherent defensibility of the location. Terraces, stairways, and narrow passages were strategically placed to slow movement, obscure lines of sight, and create natural choke points. Outsiders attempting to navigate these features would quickly encounter dead ends or abrupt drops, creating a sense of disorientation. Meanwhile, insiders moved with confidence, guided by intimate knowledge of hidden paths and subtle markers. The city's geography was weaponized, turning the mountains themselves into silent protectors. Stone construction also contributed to defense. Buildings were carefully positioned to create barriers without signaling their purpose. High walls, trapezoidal doorways, and tightly fitted stones enhanced stability and prevented easy entry, while simultaneously integrating into the natural landscape. The architecture's strength was not only structural but psychological. The sense of precision, permanence, and monumentality would have impressed or intimidated intruders. Each doorway, staircase, and terrace functioned as part of a calculated pattern, enabling guardians to control who moved where and when. Even without weapons, the city itself imposed constraints that shaped behavior and movement. The urban layout reflects an acute understanding of surveillance. Strategic vantage points allowed guardians to observe multiple terraces, pathways, and plazas simultaneously. Temples, fountains, and ritual stones were often positioned along sightlines that served both spiritual and defensive purposes. From elevated observation points, guardians could detect outsiders long before they reached sensitive areas, giving the city's inhabitants ample time to respond or obscure their activities. This integration of utility, ritual, and observation demonstrates that defense was not reactive. It was anticipatory, planned over generations, and reinforced through practice and discipline. Psychological defense was as critical as physical measures. Certain stairways, corridors, and terraces were intentionally confusing, with abrupt changes in direction, hidden turns, and multiple false paths. Outsiders would become disoriented, fatigued, and increasingly aware that the city was more complex than expected. Some terraces were overgrown or subtly modified to obscure entrances or staircases, blending functionality with concealment. The Guardians effectively used the mind's natural tendency to perceive patterns and paths to their advantage. Every misstep, sudden dead end, or concealed stairway reinforced the city's inaccessibility. The integration of water and sound added another layer to defense. Flowing water from fountains, channels, and springs masked movement, concealed footsteps, and created a sensory environment that was difficult for intruders to navigate or interpret. Guardians could move silently, using the noise of flowing water as camouflage, while outsiders remained unaware of their presence. This interplay of sound and movement was another sophisticated technique, demonstrating that the city's protection extended beyond sight and touch into perception and awareness. The Guardians were masters of subtlety, orchestrating an environment in which danger and guidance were encoded into every sensory experience. Surprise and misdirection were also critical. Certain terraces, stairways, and platforms appear to have been designed to channel outsiders into predictable paths, only to confront them with obstacles, walls, or confusing layouts. Other areas may have been deliberately left open to draw attention while concealing more important sections behind them. This deliberate manipulation of attention and movement highlights a strategic intelligence. The city's design forced outsiders to expend effort, energy, and mental focus, all while insiders remained in control. The Guardians created a city in which the act of approaching it became a test, an unspoken challenge that filtered out the unprepared. The social and organizational aspects of defense were equally significant. Guardians were likely assigned to specific zones, trained in observation, maintenance, and rapid response. Their vigilance was continuous, extending from terraces to temples, residential sectors, and water systems. Even routine tasks such as tending crops or maintaining water channels doubled as surveillance and security measures. Every movement had purpose, reinforcing the principle that the defense of Machu Picchu was a holistic endeavor, blending engineering, ritual, and human discipline into a single system of protection. Ultimately, Machu Picchu's defensive genius lies not in walls or weapons alone, but in its orchestration of terrain, architecture, psychology, and human vigilance. The Guardians transformed the city into a living fortress, where each terrace, pathway, and fountain played a role in safeguarding the sanctuary. Outsiders were disoriented and deterred not through violence, but through subtle mastery of perception and environment. Machu Picchu was more than a city. It was a carefully engineered labyrinth of protection, maintained by invisible hands that guided movement, concealed secrets, and ensured the survival of a civilization's sacred knowledge. Through these measures, we see the extraordinary foresight of the Guardians. They understood that survival required anticipation, discipline, and integration of multiple layers of defense. Machu Picchu was designed to be hidden, functional, and enduring. A city whose very form acted as a protective force, preserving not only stone and water, but knowledge, ritual, and the lives of those sworn to protect it. The defensive strategies of Machu Picchu reveal a profound understanding of both the natural and human worlds, a testament to the ingenuity and dedication of its invisible sentinels. The hidden pathways and secret staircases of Machu Picchu offer some of the most compelling evidence of the city's guardianship, revealing a sophisticated understanding of movement, concealment, and strategy. Unlike the broad plazas or ceremonial terraces designed for public or ritual use, these hidden routes were intended for the eyes and feet of insiders only. Winding along terraces, cutting through stone walls, and hugging the mountainside, these paths allowed Guardians to move swiftly and unseen, providing surveillance, communication, and rapid response capabilities across the city. The network of hidden passageways reflects a level of planning and foresight that transforms our understanding of Machu Picchu from a mere ceremonial city into a living fortress, alive with purpose and vigilance. Some staircases are carved directly into rock faces, narrow and steep, designed to be negotiable only by those familiar with their curves and turns. Outsiders, encountering these paths without guidance, would quickly become disoriented or physically unable to proceed, reinforcing the city's natural defenses. In several cases, the stairways are integrated into terraces or buildings, making them invisible from below or above. What may appear as a simple agricultural platform or structural support is, in fact, a concealed artery for movement, linking temples, observation points, water systems, and residential areas. For the Guardians, these paths were critical lifelines, enabling discreet movement without disturbing the city's daily rhythm or alerting potential intruders. The design of these hidden routes also demonstrates an acute understanding of topography and human perception. Paths often follow the contours of the mountain, winding subtly to obscure direct sight lines, while staircases twist and turn to prevent a clear view of the city from a distance. In fog or low light, the effect would be magnified, leaving outsiders confused while insiders navigated with confidence. Some routes lead to elevated vantage points, allowing Guardians to survey terraces, plazas, and approaches to the city. Others connect to water channels, storage areas, or ceremonial spaces, providing access for maintenance, communication, and ritual activity without drawing attention. The city itself becomes a carefully orchestrated stage, where movement is controlled, observed, and concealed simultaneously. The hidden pathways were also likely used for tactical purposes in the event of threat or invasion. Guardians could quickly move from observation posts to strategic points, directing personnel, resources, or signaling without exposing themselves. Narrow passages and staircases created choke points, allowing a smaller force to delay or repel intruders while remaining shielded from view. This level of planning suggests that the city's protectors anticipated the need for contingency and rapid response, embedding strategic mobility into the very structure of the sanctuary. Machu Picchu, in this sense, was not only a spiritual and agricultural center, it was a controlled, defensible environment designed for both secrecy and survival. The integration of ritual and movement is also evident along these hidden routes. Some stairways and corridors lead to sacred spaces, observation points, or ritual stones, implying that Guardians and priest astronomers traveled along them not just for logistics, but as part of ceremonial practice. Movement itself may have been imbued with meaning, serving as a form of meditation, discipline, or instruction in the city's spiritual and defensive knowledge. These paths, therefore, were not merely functional. They were part of the education and training of the Guardians, teaching them the landscape, the stars, and the subtle cues embedded in the architecture. To navigate Machu Picchu effectively, one had to internalize the rhythms of both the earth and the city. Some of the most intriguing pathways are almost invisible, disguised as terraces, retaining walls, or overgrown corridors. These routes highlight the ingenuity of the city's designers, who understood that concealment is as much about perception as it is about physical barriers. A casual visitor would never recognize these staircases or corridors without prior knowledge, making them exclusive to the initiated. This exclusivity emphasizes the dual purpose of the Guardians, maintaining secrecy while ensuring that the city remained fully functional for those who protected it. In essence, Machu Picchu was designed with two realities, one for insiders who knew its hidden structure and another for outsiders who could only glimpse its surface. The hidden paths also facilitated communication and coordination within the city. Guardians could move silently from one sector to another, monitoring terraces, temples, water systems, and residential areas without alerting outsiders or disrupting the daily life of the inhabitants. They could convey messages, deliver supplies, or respond to emergencies quickly, all while maintaining the impression that the city was serene, orderly, and largely uninhabited. This system of internal mobility allowed Machu Picchu to function seamlessly, balancing spiritual practice, agriculture, maintenance, and defense with remarkable efficiency. In addition, these secret routes may have reinforced psychological control over those within the city. The Guardians, trained to move through concealed corridors and stairways, developed a heightened sense of awareness, spatial memory, and discipline. Knowledge of these paths was a form of power, distinguishing the initiated from the uninitiated and creating a sense of hierarchy and responsibility. Mastery of these routes was both practical and symbolic, reinforcing the guardians' role as custodians of the city's secrecy, knowledge, and sacred trust. Ultimately, the hidden pathways and staircases of Machu Picchu reveal a level of strategic thinking, ingenuity, and foresight that extends far beyond engineering. They were arteries of movement, surveillance, and instruction, enabling the guardians to navigate, protect, and sustain the city in complete harmony with its natural and spiritual environment. Machu Picchu was not simply a city or sanctuary. It was a living system, a fortress of stone, water, and knowledge, maintained by those who knew its secrets. Through these concealed routes, we glimpse the unseen hands of the guardians, moving silently, watching, and preserving the sanctity and secrecy of a city that has endured for centuries against the tests of time, nature, and human curiosity. The defensive walls and fortifications of Machu Picchu are a silent testament to the ingenuity and foresight of its guardians. While the city's terraces, stairways, and natural terrain provided concealment and protection, the walls themselves represent the first physical line of defense, a carefully constructed barrier designed to blend seamlessly with the mountainside while ensuring structural stability in an earthquake-prone region. Unlike conventional fortresses, which rely on imposing height or sheer bulk, Machu Picchu's walls demonstrate subtlety, precision, and adaptability. Every stone was chosen and placed with deliberate intent, forming a resilient, nearly imperceptible shield that integrated architecture, terrain, and strategic insight into one cohesive defensive system. The most remarkable aspect of these walls is their precision. Stones were cut and fitted without mortar, a technique known as ashlar masonry, which allowed the structures to withstand seismic activity that might have shattered conventional construction. Each stone interlocks with its neighbors, distributing stress and creating flexibility within rigidity. From a distance, these walls appear to grow organically from the mountain itself, making the city difficult to detect from below. This camouflage was as much a psychological defense as a physical one, masking the presence of structures while simultaneously asserting stability and permanence. Outsiders could mistake the walls for natural rock formations, unaware of the intricate planning and labor involved in their creation. The placement of walls reflects an understanding of both human and environmental factors. Narrow passages, steep inclines, and terraces are often bounded by walls that guide movement, channeling anyone who approaches into controlled zones. In some areas, walls are positioned to force attackers into predictable paths, creating natural choke points that give a smaller defending force the advantage. This integration of wall placement, terrain, and movement demonstrates that the guardians of Machu Picchu were not only architects but tactical strategists, anticipating the flow of human activity and using the city itself as a defensive instrument. Certain walls also serve dual purposes, combining fortification with concealment. In some cases, walls obscure the edges of terraces, stairways, or water channels, making it difficult for outsiders to discern entry points or the layout of the city. Others support terraces, acting as retaining structures while doubling as barriers against intrusion. This multifunctionality is a recurring theme in Machu Picchu's design. Nothing was purely decorative or utilitarian. Each element served multiple roles, reinforcing the city's capacity for survival, secrecy, and strategic operation. For the guardians, these walls were not passive barriers. They were active instruments in the orchestration of protection. The walls also demonstrate an acute awareness of sight lines and observation. Many fortifications are positioned to provide elevated vantage points over terraces, plazas, and approaches to the city. From these locations, guardians could monitor movement without being seen, gaining both intelligence and control over the environment. Walls were often interspersed with observation niches or strategically angled corners, allowing defenders to watch multiple directions simultaneously. This integration of surveillance and fortification highlights the dual purpose of Machu Picchu's architecture. Protection was achieved not only through physical barriers but through control of perception, movement, and awareness. The construction of these walls required extraordinary labor and coordination. Stones were quarried, transported, shaped, and placed with precision, reflecting not only technical skill but also logistical mastery. Workers would have had to move massive stones across terraces, contending with steep slopes, variable weather, and the constant threat of landslides. This labor was likely organized and supervised by the guardians themselves, ensuring that each wall fulfilled its structural and strategic functions. The process of building walls thus served a dual purpose, reinforcing physical defense and embedding knowledge of construction, terrain, and strategy in those who participated. In addition to their defensive and functional qualities, the walls contribute to the city's symbolic language. Trapezoidal doorways and niches embedded within the fortifications reflect Inca cosmology and architectural philosophy, linking protection with sacred order. Every wall carries a sense of permanence, discipline, and control, signaling that Machu Picchu was a space of both physical and spiritual guardianship. The walls communicate authority and resilience, projecting power through subtlety rather than aggression, a hallmark of Inca strategic design. The positioning of walls in relation to other key elements, such as temples, terraces, and stairways, demonstrates an integrated approach to defense. No wall exists in isolation. Each works in concert with natural features, pathways, and sightlines to create a unified system. This system ensured that movement within the city could be controlled, monitored, and protected, reinforcing the role of the guardians as both physical defenders and orchestrators of secrecy. The walls function as extensions of the human element, amplifying vigilance and strategic awareness throughout the city. Ultimately, Machu Picchu's walls embody the philosophy of layered protection. They blend with the environment to conceal, support terraces and pathways, guide movement, provide surveillance, and symbolize authority. The guardians' understanding of materials, terrain, and human perception transformed simple stone into a living defense system. Machu Picchu was not merely a city. It was a sanctuary in which walls, terraces, water systems, temples, and stairways operated in harmony to preserve life, knowledge, and secrecy. The fortifications reveal a civilization capable of foresight, ingenuity, and meticulous planning, one in which every stone served a purpose and every guardian understood that survival depended on both visible and invisible defenses. Through these walls, we glimpse the intelligence, discipline, and vigilance of Machu Picchu's protectors. They remind us that the city's survival was no accident. It was the result of strategic vision, spiritual dedication, and an intricate network of human and architectural guardianship that has endured, silent yet unbroken, for centuries. The network of water channels, fountains, and aqueducts at Machu Picchu is one of the most extraordinary examples of Inca engineering, demonstrating an intricate understanding of hydrology, architecture, and strategic design. Water was not merely a resource. It was a lifeline, a tool of concealment, a symbol of purity, and a vital component in maintaining the city's secrecy and survivability. The guardians of Machu Picchu understood that control of water meant control of life, ritual, and movement, and they engineered a system capable of delivering all three with extraordinary precision. The channels, carved stones, and fountains reveal an approach in which utility, ritual, and defense were inseparable, creating a city that was both practical and sacred. Water entered the city from natural springs located above the terraces, and the guardians designed a system of channels that distributed it evenly, minimizing erosion while providing a steady supply to residences, temples, and agricultural terraces. Each channel was carefully angled to maintain flow without stagnation, while stone-lined aqueducts prevented leakage and soil erosion. The paths of water were not arbitrary. They followed natural contours, integrated with terraces and stairways, and often ran near ceremonial spaces and observation points. In this way, water was both functional and symbolic, sustaining life while marking the city's sacred geometry. The guardians relied on this system to maintain the city's physical integrity, ensuring that crops, terraces, and structures remained intact despite heavy rainfall and the steep mountain slopes. Fountains, scattered throughout the city, played multiple roles. They provided clean drinking water, contributed to ritual purification, and created subtle ambient noise that masked movement. The sound of flowing water was a form of acoustic camouflage, concealing the steps of guardians as they moved through the terraces, stairways, and hidden pathways. This integration of sound into the city's defensive strategy demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of perception and environment. Outsiders approaching the city would hear only the natural murmur of fountains and streams, unaware of the silent presence of watchers moving through concealed routes. Water, in this sense, became a tool of secrecy as well as sustenance. The channels themselves are marvels of design and precision. In some cases, the stone-lined conduits are carved directly into bedrock, with joints and gradients calculated to maintain constant flow and prevent overflow. The water system also reflects a concern for ritual and spiritual alignment. Channels often direct water to ceremonial spaces, ritual fountains, or observation points, linking the practical use of water to sacred and symbolic purposes. The guardians would have been trained to maintain this network meticulously, understanding that any disruption could compromise both the city's physical stability and its ritual balance. Maintaining the water system was thus an act of vigilance, devotion, and guardianship rolled into one. Some channels were deliberately concealed or integrated into terraces and stairways, allowing water to flow along routes that were difficult for outsiders to detect. This concealed circulation not only provided sustenance and ritual utility, but also reinforced the city's secrecy. Guardians could move along these hidden corridors or access points, using the water system as a guide, a reference, and even a barrier against intrusion. Certain fountains and channels are positioned near observation points, enabling the guardians to monitor terraces and approaches while remaining largely unseen. In effect, water served as both a lifeline and a strategic instrument, sustaining the city while enhancing its security. The design of Machu Picchu's hydraulic system also demonstrates adaptability and foresight. The guardians anticipated seasonal variations in rainfall, erosion risk, and potential blockages, constructing redundant channels and overflow systems to protect terraces and structures. Water could be rerouted, collected, and redistributed to prevent damage, ensuring the city remained functional year-round. This level of planning reflects not only technical mastery but also an understanding of risk management, a recognition that survival depended on preparation, knowledge, and continual vigilance. Beyond its practical and defensive functions, water in Machu Picchu held profound symbolic significance. Flowing water was associated with purity, renewal, and connection to the natural and spiritual worlds. Ceremonial fountains likely played a role in purification rituals, initiation practices, and offerings, integrating daily life, ritual observance, and guardianship into a seamless system. The act of tending channels, cleaning fountains, or monitoring flow was both a practical duty and a sacred responsibility, reinforcing the dual role of guardians as caretakers of both the city and its spiritual integrity. The integration of water with other elements of Machu Picchu's design, terraces, temples, pathways, and staircases, demonstrates a holistic approach to urban planning. Water channels were not isolated systems but interconnected networks that facilitated movement, concealed guardians, and enhanced agricultural productivity. They reflect a vision in which survival, secrecy, ritual, and observation were inseparable, and where every element of the city contributed to the protection and continuity of its sanctuary. The guardians understood that water was a medium through which life, movement, and secrecy flowed together, sustaining both the city and its hidden network of watchers. Ultimately, Machu Picchu's hydraulic system is more than a technical achievement. It is evidence of the guardians' extraordinary intelligence, foresight, and dedication. By mastering the movement and management of water, they ensured that the city could sustain life, maintain secrecy, and reinforce its spiritual purpose simultaneously. Water became an instrument of survival, concealment, and sacred practice, reflecting a civilization capable of integrating engineering, ritual, and strategy into a single, living system. Through these channels and fountains, we glimpse the invisible hands of the guardians, who orchestrated every flow to protect, sustain, and preserve the sanctuary of Machu Picchu for generations to come. The agricultural terraces of Machu Picchu stand as a testament to the ingenuity, foresight, and discipline of its guardians, blending engineering, ecology, and strategy into a system that sustained both the population and the city's secrecy. These terraces, carved meticulously into the steep Andean slopes, were more than simple farmland. They were a sophisticated network that stabilized the mountainside, managed water flow, and provided sustenance for the inhabitants. The guardians understood that the survival of Machu Picchu relied not only on physical protection and ritual knowledge, but also on the capacity to feed its residents in an environment that could be unforgiving. Every terrace, channel, and retaining wall was both a tool of agriculture and a component of the city's hidden defense. The design of the terraces demonstrates a deep understanding of soil science, hydrology, and microclimates. Each terrace was constructed with multiple layers: large stones at the base for drainage, gravel and sand in the middle to prevent erosion, and topsoil at the surface to nourish crops. This layering allowed water from natural springs or rainfall to filter evenly through the terrace, preventing landslides while maintaining fertility. Such precision reflects knowledge passed down through generations and carefully maintained by the guardians, who recognized that the integrity of the terraces was essential not only for sustenance but for the stability and concealment of the entire city. The terraces functioned as both agricultural plots and structural reinforcements, seamlessly combining productivity with defense. Crop selection and rotation were integral to the terraces' success. The guardians cultivated a variety of tubers, maize, and other high-altitude crops, carefully matching plants to specific terraces based on sunlight, soil depth, and drainage patterns. The arrangement minimized pest infestations, maximized yield, and ensured year-round sustenance. Surplus production could be stored, supporting not only the immediate population but also enabling the city to withstand periods of isolation or threat. In this way, the agricultural system was both pragmatic and strategic, ensuring that Machu Picchu could function independently, shielded from external pressures, while maintaining the physical and spiritual energy of its inhabitants. The terraces also had a psychological and defensive function. Their steep inclines and carefully placed retaining walls created obstacles for outsiders attempting to navigate the city from below. From a distance, the terraces appear as a continuous slope, making it difficult to discern pathways, stairways, or hidden access points. The layering of stone, soil, and crops served a dual purpose, nourishing the city while concealing movement and creating a visually deceptive landscape. The guardians understood that defense was not solely about armed resistance. The city itself could manipulate perception, creating confusion and delay for anyone unfamiliar with its layout. In addition to cultivation, terraces facilitated sophisticated water management. Channels were integrated along and beneath terraces to distribute water evenly, prevent erosion, and channel excess rainwater safely down the mountain. This prevented landslides, protected the structural integrity of the city, and ensured that crops thrived. Water management was inseparable from the terrace's defensive function. By controlling the flow of water, guardians could influence pathways, conceal movement, and maintain the city's stability. The terraces, in effect, were living systems, performing multiple functions simultaneously, sustaining life, reinforcing the city, and safeguarding its secrets. The positioning of terraces also reflects an understanding of microclimates. Different slopes, exposures, and elevations created varying temperature and humidity zones, allowing the guardians to experiment with cultivation techniques and optimize food production. Some terraces faced the sun to capture warmth for frost-sensitive crops, while others were shaded to preserve moisture or grow hardier plants. This nuanced approach ensured that the city could thrive year-round, even in the challenging Andean environment, and allowed guardians to plan and manage resources with precision. Knowledge of these microclimates became a critical part of their expertise, linking agriculture, observation, and guardianship. The terraces also provided indirect surveillance and control over the city. From certain vantage points on higher terraces, guardians could monitor agricultural workers, residential zones, and approach routes without being seen. The elevation and layout created natural observation posts, allowing defenders to detect movement and coordinate responses if needed. Agriculture was thus intertwined with security. Tending the terraces was both a productive activity and a form of guardianship, embedding vigilance into daily life. Beyond functionality, the terraces carried symbolic meaning. Their orderly construction, precise alignment, and integration with temples and ritual spaces conveyed a sense of harmony between humans, nature, and the divine. Maintaining the terraces was not just an agricultural duty. It was a spiritual responsibility, ensuring that the city remained in balance with both earthly and cosmic forces. The Guardians' care for these spaces reflects a worldview in which survival, secrecy, and spiritual integrity were inseparable. Ultimately, the agricultural terraces of Machu Picchu exemplify the holistic intelligence of its guardians. They combined engineering, ecology, strategy, and spirituality into a living system capable of sustaining the city physically, psychologically, and spiritually. The terraces were simultaneously productive, defensive, and symbolic, tools of life, concealment, and devotion. Through them, the Guardians demonstrated an extraordinary ability to integrate multiple layers of knowledge, creating a city that thrived in harmony with its environment while remaining hidden, resilient, and enduring. Through these terraces, we see that the Guardians of Machu Picchu were not merely passive caretakers. They were architects of survival, blending observation, ingenuity, and spiritual devotion into every stone and crop. Their work ensured that the city could endure, concealed in the heights, supported by the land, and maintained by hands trained in the sacred duty of preservation, vigilance, and secrecy. The network of observation points and lookout positions throughout Machu Picchu reflects an unparalleled understanding of surveillance, landscape, and strategy by its guardians. Unlike typical cities where walls or towers serve as the primary means of vigilance, Machu Picchu's observation points were subtle, seamlessly integrated into the terrain, and carefully positioned to provide maximum oversight without revealing their presence. Every terrace, staircase, and temple offered vantage points that allowed the Guardians to monitor the flow of movement, anticipate threats, and maintain control over both the physical and psychological environment of the city. These points were as much about perception as they were about defense. The city itself became a mechanism of awareness, guiding the eyes and attention of those within it while masking them from outsiders. The Guardians understood that concealment and surveillance were inseparable. Observation posts were often placed near corners, terraces, or stairways that offered wide visibility while remaining hidden from below or from approaching outsiders. Some lookout positions aligned with natural features such as cliffs, ridges, or trees, providing cover while allowing clear sightlines to key areas, plazas, residential sectors, temples, and access paths. This strategic integration meant that the Guardians could observe activity throughout the city, detect any intrusion, and coordinate movement without ever being seen. In effect, Machu Picchu's topography was weaponized. The city itself became a living system of vigilance. Certain temples and ceremonial areas doubled as observation points, illustrating the integration of spiritual and strategic functions. The Temple of the Sun, for example, occupies a slightly elevated position that allowed Guardians to monitor the central plaza and approaches, while simultaneously serving as a ceremonial site. Similarly, terraces adjacent to sacred stones or fountains provided discrete vantage points for surveillance, blending routine activity with protective oversight. The Guardians' training would have emphasized the dual purpose of these spaces, teaching them to interpret movement, monitor potential threats, and maintain the sacred integrity of the city simultaneously. Observation, in Machu Picchu, was never separate from daily life. It was embedded into every action and ritual. Observation was also coordinated with knowledge of the surrounding environment. The city's Guardians could track movement along mountain ridges, rivers, and hidden paths leading to Machu Picchu, using a combination of sight, sound, and familiarity with terrain to anticipate arrivals or intrusions. Even the clouds and mist, which frequently enveloped the city, were leveraged as natural concealment for the Guardians, allowing them to move unseen while masking the approach of outsiders. Knowledge of these environmental patterns was critical, and Guardians would have been trained to read not just the city, but the mountains, weather, and natural cues as part of their surveillance duties. The positioning of lookout points also demonstrates psychological insight. Certain terraces or high platforms were deliberately visible to intruders from a distance, creating the impression that the city was lightly defended or sparsely occupied. Meanwhile, hidden vantage points allowed Guardians to monitor movement without revealing the full extent of their presence. This manipulation of perception added an extra layer of security, deterring curiosity, obscuring the city's true scale, and preserving its secrecy. Machu Picchu's design relied on both physical and psychological observation, turning the act of watching into an invisible shield. Furthermore, observation was closely linked with communication and coordination. Guardians stationed at various points could signal to one another through gestures, sounds, or reflections of light, creating a network of awareness across the terraces, stairways, and residential areas. These signals allowed rapid response to potential threats or emergencies, ensuring that the city's operations, agriculture, ritual, and daily life continued uninterrupted even under pressure. In this way, the observation points functioned not only as surveillance sites, but as nodes in a larger network of guardianship, connecting human knowledge with the physical and spiritual infrastructure of the city. Many of the observation positions are discreetly connected to hidden paths, staircases, or terraces, allowing guardians to move between vantage points quickly and unseen. This internal mobility enhanced the effectiveness of surveillance, enabling continuous coverage without alerting outsiders. In some cases, pathways leading to observation posts were disguised as ordinary terraces or agricultural zones, ensuring that knowledge of their locations remained restricted to trained personnel. This integration of concealment, mobility, and oversight demonstrates the strategic intelligence of Machu Picchu's design, in which the Guardians' actions were amplified by the city's architecture and terrain. The observation points also had an educational and ritual dimension. Young Guardians and initiates may have been trained at these positions, learning to interpret movement, read terrain, and integrate environmental cues with ceremonial knowledge. Observation was not only a defensive practice but a form of instruction, reinforcing the Guardians' connection to the city, the land, and its spiritual significance. Mastery of these points required discipline, awareness, and knowledge, a reflection of the broader role of the Guardians as both protectors and stewards of Machu Picchu's legacy. Ultimately, Machu Picchu's observation network exemplifies the seamless blending of architecture, landscape, psychology, and human skill. Guardians transformed vantage points into instruments of protection, surveillance, and coordination, ensuring that the city remained functional, secure, and concealed. These points allowed insiders to see and respond without being seen themselves, creating a hidden layer of control that sustained both daily life and the city's spiritual and strategic integrity. The observation points were living extensions of the Guardians' eyes, enabling them to orchestrate movement, protect secrets, and maintain the sanctuary's delicate balance. Through this network, we see that Machu Picchu's Guardians were not passive watchers but active orchestrators of awareness, blending human skill with architectural and environmental intelligence. The city was alive with unseen vigilance, every terrace and platform contributing to a web of perception that protected life, knowledge, and ritual. The observation points reveal the extraordinary foresight and discipline of those who understood that the true strength of Machu Picchu lay not just in its stones, water, or terraces, but in the eyes, knowledge, and unwavering presence of its hidden guardians. The spiritual and ritual practices of Machu Picchu were inextricably linked to its protection, functioning as both sacred observances and practical tools for the Guardians. Rituals imbued the city with a sense of order, focus, and vigilance, ensuring that every movement, observation, and architectural element was aligned with cosmic and terrestrial rhythms. Guardians were trained not only in defense, agriculture, and astronomy, but in ceremonial knowledge that reinforced their role as keepers of the city's secrets. Each ritual, whether performed at the Intihuatana Stone, the Temple of the Sun, or in hidden ceremonial plazas, served to strengthen the spiritual fabric of the city, maintain harmony with natural forces, and instill discipline, awareness, and cohesion among those charged with its care. Ceremonial spaces throughout Machu Picchu reveal a sophisticated understanding of ritual as both spiritual and practical practice. The Temple of the Sun, carved directly into the bedrock, captures sunlight during solstices, creating precise illuminations that signaled the timing of agricultural activities, communal events, and sacred observances. Guardians who understood these celestial alignments could coordinate planting and harvesting, organize ritual ceremonies, and maintain the city's rhythm in synchronization with cosmic events. The rituals thus reinforced both spiritual beliefs and practical governance, embedding the Guardians' work within a sacred framework that elevated their duties to a form of divine stewardship. Sacred stones and huacas throughout the city further illustrate the integration of ritual with guardianship. These stones, often carved with symbolic patterns or aligned to celestial markers, acted as focal points for offerings, prayers, and ceremonial activities. Guardians would approach these sites not only to honor the gods, but to reinforce their awareness of the city's layout, secret pathways, and strategic vantage points. Ritual practice became an immersive form of training, ensuring that those responsible for protection internalized the landscape's hidden geometry and the interconnectedness of sacred, practical, and defensive systems. Each act of devotion was simultaneously an act of preparation, keeping the guardians attuned to both spiritual and earthly responsibilities. Water played a central role in these practices. Fountains, channels, and ceremonial pools were sites of purification, offerings, and observation, linking the practical management of resources with spiritual devotion. Guardians maintained these water systems as acts of ritual responsibility, ensuring that water flowed correctly while performing ceremonies that honored natural and divine forces. Flowing water masked movement, enhanced observation, and reinforced the sense of sacred order, creating a synergy between ritual, surveillance, and environmental control. The guardians' intimate knowledge of water systems, combined with ceremonial duties, ensured that the city's spiritual and physical integrity were maintained in tandem. The timing and performance of rituals reinforced the guardians' discipline and cohesion. Many ceremonies corresponded with lunar phases, solstices, and agricultural cycles, creating predictable rhythms that structured daily life. Observing, performing, or supervising these rituals required attention to detail, coordination, and memory, qualities essential for maintaining security and secrecy. Guardians were trained to read the heavens, align stones, and interpret environmental cues, transforming ritual practice into a comprehensive method of internalizing the city's protective strategies. Spiritual observance thus became inseparable from practical preparedness. The role of ritual extended into the psychological and symbolic dimensions of defense. By maintaining sacred routines, the guardians reinforced their authority, cohesion, and focus, while also cultivating a sense of awe and respect among the population. Outsiders unfamiliar with these ceremonies would perceive a harmonious, orderly city, unaware of the hidden layers of vigilance, strategy, and sacred knowledge. Ritual became a subtle form of influence, projecting order while preserving secrecy. Machu Picchu's spiritual life was therefore a strategic instrument, embedding protection, discipline, and hierarchy into the very acts of worship and observance. Initiation and education of new guardians often occurred through ritual. Young men and women may have been guided along hidden paths, terraces, and ceremonial areas as part of sacred instruction, learning to observe celestial alignments, interpret symbolic markers, and integrate movement with spiritual purpose. These rites of passage trained them in both practical and sacred knowledge, embedding the principles of guardianship into memory, perception, and daily practice. The city itself functioned as a classroom, temple, and observatory, with rituals serving as the curriculum for cultivating vigilance, awareness, and spiritual attunement. Rituals also reinforced the connection between the city and its surrounding environment. Many ceremonies were aligned with mountain peaks, rivers, and sky events, linking human activity with cosmic and terrestrial forces. Guardians learned to read natural cues, anticipate weather patterns, and interpret celestial signals, integrating these observations into both spiritual practice and defensive strategy. The sacred landscape of Machu Picchu was thus a living system in which ritual, observation, and protection were inseparable. A city alive with knowledge, devotion, and strategic foresight. Ultimately, the spiritual and ritual practices of Machu Picchu reveal a civilization in which guardianship was a holistic discipline. Defense, agriculture, astronomy, architecture, and ritual were not separate spheres but integrated components of a single system designed to sustain life, maintain secrecy, and preserve sacred knowledge. The guardians were not merely protectors of stone and water. They were custodians of a living, sacred network that required constant attention, awareness, and devotion. Through ritual, they maintained harmony between humans, landscape, and cosmos, ensuring that Machu Picchu thrived in isolation concealed, and secure. Through these ceremonies, we glimpse the invisible architecture of vigilance that sustained Machu Picchu. Rituals were not abstract or ornamental. They were tools, education, and discipline, reinforcing the guardians' role as stewards of both physical and spiritual protection. The city's survival depended as much on the performance of sacred acts as on terraces, walls, and observation points. In the rhythms of ritual, we see a civilization whose power, secrecy, and devotion were inseparable, leaving a legacy of harmony, intelligence, and hidden guardianship that endures to this day. The concealment and secrecy of Machu Picchu were as vital to its survival as its walls, terraces, and water systems. The guardians understood that the city's greatest protection lay not in repelling invaders with force alone, but in keeping it hidden, obscured, and inscrutable. Machu Picchu was deliberately designed to be invisible from a distance, to blend seamlessly with the Andean landscape, and to resist detection from those who might seek it for conquest, curiosity, or plunder. Every aspect of the city, its location, orientation, architecture, and pathways, was carefully orchestrated to create layers of secrecy, ensuring that only the initiated could navigate, understand, or truly perceive the sanctuary in its entirety. The city's placement on a ridge between Huayna Picchu and Machu Picchu mountains was deliberate, taking advantage of natural cliffs, steep slopes, and surrounding peaks. These natural features created a fortress of stone and sky, limiting visibility and access. From the valley below, the city is almost invisible, obscured by clouds, mist, and jagged mountain ridges. The guardians enhanced this natural camouflage by designing terraces, walls, and buildings that mimicked the surrounding geology. Stones were chosen for color, texture, and shape to blend seamlessly with the mountainside, making the city appear as a natural extension of the environment. Outsiders could traverse the surrounding terrain without ever realizing a thriving city was hidden above them. Paths and stairways were designed to confuse and control perception. Approaches to the city were narrow, winding, and intentionally indirect. Visitors or intruders ascending these paths would encounter abrupt turns, hidden terraces, and misdirecting staircases, creating a sense of disorientation. Certain routes were visible only to those who knew their purpose, while others were concealed behind terraces or built into cliff faces. This manipulation of movement ensured that outsiders could not easily penetrate the city or understand its full scale. For the guardians, knowledge of the hidden pathways was a form of power, allowing them to move freely while maintaining the city's secrecy. Architectural design contributed to concealment. Buildings were integrated with terraces, walls, and rock formations, creating visual continuity between constructed and natural elements. Rooflines, angles, and stonework were aligned to prevent detection from both the valley below and distant mountain peaks. Temples, plazas, and residential structures were deliberately positioned to maintain privacy, control sightlines, and preserve the city's hidden character. Even ceremonial spaces, while significant to the inhabitants, were oriented to reduce external visibility, ensuring that sacred practices remained secret from outsiders. The guardians' understanding of perception, landscape, and spatial psychology was instrumental in maintaining the city's concealed nature. Water systems also played a role in secrecy. Channels, fountains, and aqueducts were integrated into terraces and hidden paths, allowing guardians to move silently, mask footsteps, and maintain the city's daily operations without revealing their presence. The sound of flowing water, combined with natural echoes from cliffs and terraces, created an acoustic environment in which movement was obscured. This interplay of sound and concealment allowed the guardians to observe, coordinate, and protect the city without detection, reinforcing the subtle yet effective defensive strategy embedded in Machu Picchu's design. The city's agricultural terraces were another element of concealment. From a distance, they appear as natural slopes or geological formations, masking both the scale of cultivation and the presence of pathways beneath or alongside them. Crops were arranged to maximize growth while preserving visual deception, creating a productive yet hidden network that sustained the inhabitants. This integration of food production with camouflage demonstrates the guardians' capacity to merge utility with strategic secrecy, ensuring that Machu Picchu remained livable and undetectable simultaneously. Guardians likely employed coded knowledge to reinforce secrecy. Initiates may have been trained to recognize markers, paths, and alignments invisible to outsiders. Sacred stones, hidden niches, and subtle architectural cues functioned as guides, enabling movement, observation, and ritual performance without exposure. This system of hidden signals created an internal language of protection. Only those who understood it could navigate the city effectively. Outsiders, lacking this knowledge, would be unable to grasp the city's structure or exploit its resources. Secrecy was thus a combination of physical design, environmental camouflage, and transmitted wisdom. The psychological dimension of concealment was equally significant. By controlling what could be seen, understood, or accessed, the Guardians created a sense of mystery, awe, and respect for the city. Outsiders encountering the terrain, terraces, or partial glimpses of structures would perceive an imposing, almost mystical presence, reinforcing the sense that Machu Picchu was protected by forces beyond human understanding. The hidden nature of the city amplified its spiritual and strategic power, allowing the Guardians to operate without confrontation while preserving the sanctity of their environment. Ultimately, the concealment strategies of Machu Picchu reveal the ingenuity and foresight of its Guardians. They relied not solely on walls, weapons, or visibility, but on the city's ability to remain hidden, integrated with the landscape, and perceptually impenetrable. Every terrace, pathway, water channel, and architectural alignment served the purpose of obscuring the city from unwanted eyes while enabling insiders to navigate freely. Secrecy was the city's ultimate defense, maintained through design, training, observation, and ritual. Through these methods, we see that Machu Picchu's Guardians were masters of perception and environment. The city's concealment was not accidental. It was deliberate, layered, and maintained with unwavering discipline. Machu Picchu survives not only because of its stones or terraces, but because of the intelligence, foresight, and dedication of those who understood the power of invisibility. They transformed landscape, architecture, and movement into a living system of protection, ensuring that the city could endure, hidden and sacred, for centuries to come. Theories about the ultimate purpose of Machu Picchu have fascinated historians, archaeologists, and travelers for centuries. Yet no single explanation fully captures the complexity and ingenuity of the city. While traditional interpretations emphasize its role as a royal estate for Pakakuri or as a ceremonial center for religious observances, deeper analysis suggests that its function extended far beyond these straightforward roles. Machu Picchu was a nexus of power, knowledge, and secrecy, meticulously designed to integrate agriculture, astronomy, ritual, defense, and guardianship into a single, coherent system. Theories about the city's purpose must account not only for its grandeur but also for the subtle intelligence embedded in every stone, terrace, and pathway. One prominent theory posits that Machu Picchu functioned as an elite ceremonial center and observatory, where the Inca elite maintained direct communication with cosmic forces. The alignment of temples, the Intihuatana stone, and certain terraces with solar and lunar events supports this idea, suggesting that astronomical observation guided agricultural cycles, ritual timing, and strategic planning. Guardians stationed at key vantage points could monitor these alignments, ensuring that ceremonial practice, cultivation, and observation were synchronized with celestial rhythms. This integration of cosmology, ritual, and practical management suggests a city where spiritual power and strategic control were inseparable. Another theory emphasizes Machu Picchu as a fortified sanctuary, deliberately concealed to protect sacred knowledge, elite families, or critical resources. The city's remote location, hidden pathways, observation points, and defensive terraces indicate that secrecy and security were central to its design. Guardians were trained not only to maintain the city's structural integrity, but to orchestrate movement, concealment, and surveillance, transforming the sanctuary into a living labyrinth of protection. This perspective reframes Machu Picchu as more than a ceremonial or residential site. It was a controlled environment where human, architectural, and environmental intelligence combined to safeguard both people and knowledge. Some scholars propose that Machu Picchu was a center of experimentation in agriculture and sustainability. The terraces, microclimates, and irrigation systems allowed for testing of crop varieties, soil treatments, and water management techniques. Guardians may have overseen these agricultural experiments, ensuring both their secrecy and productivity. This theory suggests that the city functioned as a laboratory of sorts, where the integration of observation, ritual, and careful environmental control enabled a resilient, self-sustaining community. Such an approach aligns with evidence of precise water management, soil layering, and crop rotation, revealing a sophisticated understanding of ecology and adaptation. Others suggest that Machu Picchu's purpose was as a symbolic embodiment of Inca cosmology, designed to mirror sacred mountains, rivers, and celestial patterns. Every terrace, temple, and stone alignment may have been intended to reflect a larger cosmological order, linking the city's physical structure with spiritual and political power. Guardians and elites, attuned to this symbolism, would have understood their roles as mediators between human activity and divine forces. In this context, Machu Picchu becomes not just a living city, but a multidimensional construct where ritual, observation, and guardianship intersect, blending the practical with the mystical. A more provocative theory considers Machu Picchu as a repository of forbidden or highly restricted knowledge. Hidden pathways, concealed staircases, and secret observation points suggest that certain areas were accessible only to the initiated. Guardians may have preserved knowledge related to astronomy, agriculture, ritual, or even political strategy, shielding it from outsiders or rival factions. From this perspective, the city's secrecy was not merely defensive but intellectual, transforming Machu Picchu into a sanctuary of knowledge, a place where the Inca elite could cultivate mastery over both natural and social systems without interference. Some interdisciplinary studies even propose that Machu Picchu functioned as a center for elite training and initiation. Young guardians, priests, or administrators may have been taught to navigate its complex terraces, interpret celestial alignments, manage water systems, and participate in ritual cycles. The city, in essence, became a living school, where every act, whether tending crops, observing the heavens, or performing sacred ceremonies, was an opportunity for training, discipline, and internalization of knowledge. This theory highlights the integration of practical skills, spiritual awareness, and strategic guardianship as a central function of the city. Ultimately, these theories are not mutually exclusive. Machu Picchu may have been simultaneously a ceremonial center, observatory, fortified sanctuary, agricultural laboratory, cosmological symbol, repository of knowledge, and training ground. Its genius lies in this multidimensionality. Every terrace, staircase, water channel, and temple contributes to multiple purposes, blending survival, secrecy, and sacred meaning into a single coherent system. The Guardians were essential to this integration, ensuring that every element functioned harmoniously, preserving both life and knowledge while maintaining secrecy. Through the lens of these theories, we recognize that Machu Picchu was far more than a city or a royal retreat. It was a carefully orchestrated network of function, meaning, and guardianship, a testament to the Inca's mastery of landscape, architecture, and human behavior. Each theory adds depth to our understanding, revealing a civilization capable of blending science, spirituality, strategy, and secrecy into a living, enduring masterpiece. Machu Picchu challenges us to see beyond the visible, to appreciate the hidden intelligence embedded in every stone, and to acknowledge the unseen hands that orchestrated a city of extraordinary complexity. By examining these theories, we glimpse the interplay of vision, secrecy, and guardianship that sustained Machu Picchu, a place where knowledge, ritual, and survival converged, creating a sanctuary as resilient as it was beautiful, and as mysterious as the mountains that conceal it. The final revelation of Machu Picchu's guardianship lies not merely in its stones, terraces, or waterways, but in the enduring legacy of human intelligence, devotion, and strategic foresight embedded within the city. Over centuries, the world has marveled at its beauty, yet few have grasped the depth of planning and vigilance that sustained it. Machu Picchu was not simply a royal estate or a ceremonial site. It was a living, breathing system, meticulously orchestrated to blend survival, spirituality, secrecy, and observation into a single coherent whole. The guardians were the invisible architects of this harmony, moving unseen through hidden stairways, monitoring terraces, sustaining water systems, and performing rituals that intertwined life, defense, and devotion. Their legacy is etched not only in the physical remains but in the very essence of the city's enduring mystery. As the centuries passed and the Inca Empire fell, Machu Picchu's guardians faded from memory, leaving behind a city that seemed abandoned yet perfectly preserved. The secrecy they maintained was so effective that for hundreds of years, outsiders were unaware of its existence and the knowledge of its internal systems. Hidden pathways, observation points, and ritual practices remained inaccessible. The city survived natural disasters, erosion, and human curiosity, not through brute strength but through careful design, concealment, and the disciplined efforts of those who understood its purpose. Machu Picchu's endurance is a testament to the intelligence of its guardians, whose foresight ensured that the city could outlast empires, explorers, and time itself. The ultimate revelation comes in recognizing that the city's architecture, terraces, water systems, and ceremonial spaces were not isolated features but interconnected components of a larger network. The guardians orchestrated movement, observation, agriculture, and ritual with precision, creating a self-sustaining system that balanced human, environmental, and spiritual needs. Every hidden stairway, every observation post, and every terrace contributed to the city's resilience, secrecy, and sacred harmony. This orchestration reflects a civilization capable of integrating multiple layers of knowledge, engineering, astronomy, agriculture, spiritual practice, and strategic defense into a unified, functional, and enduring sanctuary. Machu Picchu also challenges modern notions of security and power. The guardians relied not on walls alone or military might but on understanding, perception, and the environment itself. Secrecy, camouflage, and control of information were as critical as terraces or water channels. By mastering movement, observation, and ritual, the guardians created a city that could thrive hidden in plain sight, resilient to both natural and human threats. The lessons of Machu Picchu extend beyond archaeology. They illustrate the power of intelligence, foresight, and strategic thinking in shaping and preserving civilization. Emotionally, the legacy of the guardians resonates because it reflects human courage, discipline, and devotion. These were people who lived in harmony with the mountains, the stars, and the rhythms of life, dedicating themselves to a duty that required vigilance, knowledge, and spiritual alignment. They were scholars, engineers, priests, and strategists, all in one, ensuring that Machu Picchu remained both sacred and survivable. Their unseen hands protected not only physical structures but also knowledge, ritual, and the integrity of a civilization's vision. In this sense, Machu Picchu is as much a monument to human dedication and intellect as it is to stone and stonework. The city's endurance forces us to confront deeper questions about the nature of history and memory. What other lost guardians, secret networks, or civilizations might have shaped the world in ways we cannot yet perceive? Machu Picchu reminds us that survival and legacy are often the result of intelligence, discipline, and secrecy rather than force or conquest. The city stands as a symbol of resilience, a lesson in how knowledge, strategy, and spiritual alignment can create a legacy that endures for centuries, hidden yet profoundly present. Its mysteries continue to inspire awe, curiosity, and reflection, inviting us to imagine the lives, duties, and wisdom of those who protected it. In the final analysis, Machu Picchu's guardians reveal that the city was never merely a passive landscape, but a living, orchestrated environment sustained by human ingenuity and devotion. Every stone, terrace, channel, and pathway was a conduit of purpose, designed to preserve life, maintain secrecy, and honor the sacred order. Their legacy endures not only in the city itself, but in the realization that civilization, knowledge, and survival are inseparable when guided by foresight, discipline, and care. Machu Picchu is not simply a ruin to be admired. It is a story of guardianship, resilience, and human vision, a testament to what can be achieved when people act in harmony with the land, the cosmos, and one another. As visitors gaze upon the terraces, the temples, and the hidden stairways, they are not only seeing stone and landscape, they are witnessing the culmination of centuries of vigilance, intelligence, and devotion. The guardians may no longer walk those hidden paths, but their presence is palpable in every carefully aligned stone and every secret channel of water. Machu Picchu stands as a living testament, asking us to consider the unseen labor, wisdom, and dedication that made its survival possible. It leaves a lingering reflection. What if this integration of knowledge, life, and protection, changes how we perceive not just history, but the potential for human ingenuity and harmony in our own time? In this way, Machu Picchu is both an ending and a beginning, a place where the past's silent guardians speak to the present, reminding us that true protection, sustainability, and wisdom lie in understanding, foresight, and devotion, leaving a legacy that transcends centuries and continues to inspire wonder and reflection. The final contemplation of Machu Picchu lies in its enduring mystery and the subtle lessons it imparts about human potential, foresight, and resilience. While the city's stones, terraces, and temples continue to capture the imagination, the true marvel is the intelligence embedded within its design and the disciplined guardians who ensured its survival. Machu Picchu was never simply a residence or ceremonial site. It was a living, dynamic system where every element from hidden stairways to water channels, from observation posts to sacred temples, functioned as part of a cohesive strategy for preservation, secrecy, and spiritual harmony. The guardians orchestrated this system with a level of foresight and understanding that resonates across centuries, offering insights into the integration of human skill, environmental mastery, and strategic thinking. One of the most remarkable aspects of Machu Picchu is the way it harmonizes human activity with the natural landscape. The city does not dominate the mountains, it blends seamlessly with them. Terraces flow along the contours of steep slopes, walls mimic the jagged lines of cliffs, and buildings integrate with bedrock as if they grew from it. Guardians understood that survival depended on this harmony. By designing a city that was both concealed and resilient, they minimized exposure to external threats while maximizing the land's natural stability. Machu Picchu's longevity is a testament to this sophisticated ecological intelligence. It survives not through force, but through subtle adaptation, foresight, and intimate knowledge of terrain. The integration of water management, agriculture, and observation reveals a civilization that treated every resource as sacred and strategic. Water channels not only sustained crops but masked movement, nourished rituals, and reinforced structural integrity. Terraces stabilized mountainsides while producing sustenance and concealing pathways. Observation points allowed guardians to monitor movement, coordinate responses, and maintain secrecy, transforming the city into a living organism of vigilance. Machu Picchu's design demonstrates that the guardians understood the interconnectedness of all systems, human, environmental, and spiritual, and leveraged this knowledge to create a sanctuary capable of enduring centuries of change and isolation. Machu Picchu also invites reflection on the nature of knowledge and its preservation. Many of the city's functions relied on specialized understanding of astronomy, hydrology, agriculture, and ritual practice. Guardians were entrusted with maintaining this knowledge, passing it to initiates, and protecting it from outsiders. The city's secrecy was not arbitrary, it was deliberate, ensuring that both life and wisdom could continue undisturbed. In this sense, Machu Picchu is as much a repository of human understanding as it is a marvel of architecture. Its guardianship demonstrates that survival and legacy depend as much on the careful stewardship of knowledge as on physical defenses. The rituals and spiritual practices of Machu Picchu further underscore the guardians' integration of the sacred and the practical. Ceremonial spaces, aligned with celestial events, water systems, and hidden observation points, were not only sites of devotion but instruments of cohesion, training, and strategic awareness. Daily life, sacred observance, and protection were inseparable, reinforcing discipline, alertness, and harmony. The guardians' dedication to these practices reveals a civilization in which the spiritual and the practical were mutually reinforcing, where ritual was a form of training, and where devotion itself became a mechanism of survival and secrecy. Machu Picchu's concealment and strategic design also reflect a profound understanding of perception. The city's remote location, hidden pathways, terraces, and architectural camouflage ensured that it remained invisible and largely inaccessible to outsiders for centuries. Guardians could move freely, observe silently, and coordinate resources, all while maintaining the city's secrecy. This emphasis on invisibility as protection demonstrates a level of strategic thinking that transcends conventional fortification, highlighting the sophistication of the city's defense. True strength lies in being unseen, in controlling perception, and in orchestrating knowledge. Ultimately, Machu Picchu's enduring lesson is one of holistic vision. Its guardians integrated multiple domains: engineering, agriculture, spirituality, surveillance, and secrecy into a seamless system. Every stone, every channel, every terrace, and every temple contributed to both survival and meaning. The city is a reminder that intelligence, foresight, and discipline can create resilience far beyond what mere force can achieve. Machu Picchu challenges us to see the past not as static ruins, but as living systems sustained by knowledge, devotion, and strategy. Its hidden guardians, though long gone, continue to speak through the city's enduring harmony, inviting us to reflect on the ways human ingenuity can shape the world when aligned with nature, perception, and purpose. As we stand amidst the terraces, temples, and secret stairways, Machu Picchu prompts a deeper contemplation. The Guardian's work was invisible, meticulous, and enduring, yet it created a legacy that transcends time. The city demonstrates that survival is not merely a matter of strength or numbers, but of intelligence, discipline, and foresight. Every element, from water channels to observation posts, from sacred stones to hidden pathways, reveals a civilization capable of blending practicality, spirituality, and strategy into a unified, enduring masterpiece. Machu Picchu reminds us that true guardianship is a synthesis of knowledge, devotion, and harmony, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire wonder, reflection, and admiration. In this final revelation, Machu Picchu becomes more than a city. It becomes a mirror of human potential. Its guardians teach us that the integration of observation, secrecy, ritual, and environmental mastery can create a resilience that survives the passage of centuries. The city asks us to consider the unseen efforts that shape history, the intelligence that safeguards knowledge, and the devotion that preserves harmony. As we reflect on this hidden sanctuary, we are left with a profound understanding. The true marvel of Machu Picchu is not only its stones or terraces, but the invisible hands, minds, and spirits that orchestrated a city of enduring secrecy, wisdom, and beauty. Machu Picchu is not merely a city carved into the Andes. It is a testament to the extraordinary foresight, discipline, and devotion of the guardians who orchestrated its survival. The city's beauty, so often captured in photographs and travel journals, conceals the intricate intelligence embedded in every terrace, staircase, water channel, and temple. Machu Picchu was never intended to be merely seen. It was meant to endure, to conceal, and to harmonize human activity with the natural and spiritual worlds. The guardians understood that survival in such a remote, challenging environment required far more than stone walls or brute strength. It demanded intelligence, observation, secrecy, and a profound awareness of the landscape. They were architects not only of the city but of its enduring mystery, moving through hidden paths and terraces with a purpose that combined practical mastery and spiritual devotion. Every aspect of Machu Picchu reflects this integration of intelligence and foresight. The terraces, carefully carved into steep mountainsides, were not only agricultural feats. They were structural foundations, stabilizing the slopes and preventing erosion while simultaneously concealing stairways, paths, and movement. Water systems, drawn from hidden springs and channeled through complex aqueducts, nourished crops, fed ceremonial fountains, and masked the movement of those who protected the city. Observation points, often disguised as natural rock formations or terraces, allowed guardians to monitor activity throughout the city, anticipate threats, and coordinate responses without being seen. Even the ceremonial temples and sacred stones were positioned with dual purpose, as focal points for ritual and as strategic markers for maintaining oversight. Machu Picchu, in essence, functioned as a living, breathing organism, sustained by the invisible yet precise actions of its guardians. The spiritual and ritual practices of the city were not mere ornamentation. They were central to its protection. Sacred ceremonies, timed with the cycles of the sun, moon, and sacred mountains, structured the rhythm of daily life and reinforced discipline among guardians. Rituals at the Intihuatana stone, the Temple of the Sun, and hidden ceremonial plazas were both acts of devotion and instruments of vigilance, teaching guardians to maintain awareness, observe patterns, and interpret signs from the environment. Through these practices, the guardians internalized the knowledge of the city's hidden paths, observation points, and ecological systems, embedding practical strategy into spiritual observance. Every act of worship was simultaneously an act of training, a rehearsal of vigilance, and a reinforcement of the city's secrecy. Secrecy itself was a deliberate and central aspect of Machu Picchu's endurance. The city was deliberately hidden from view, positioned between ridges, surrounded by steep cliffs, and shrouded often in clouds and mist. From the valley below, it appears as nothing more than natural rock formations, a camouflage perfected by careful selection of stone, alignment of terraces, and integration with the mountainside. Hidden stairways and winding paths disoriented outsiders while allowing guardians to move freely and coordinate activity. Even the soundscape, the rush of water through channels and fountains, was manipulated to mask movement. Machu Picchu's invisibility was not accidental. It was strategic, demonstrating an understanding of perception, environmental psychology, and the power of controlled knowledge. The Guardians' work required mastery across multiple domains. They were simultaneously engineers, astronomers, agriculturists, priests, and strategists. They observed the movement of the sun and stars, aligning temples and ceremonial spaces with celestial events to guide agricultural cycles and ritual timing. They managed water flow with precision, ensuring terraces remained fertile and slopes stable while masking their own presence. They coordinated observation posts, using hidden vantage points to monitor the city and surrounding approaches. They maintained secrecy through concealed stairways, hidden terraces, and coded knowledge. And they performed rituals that reinforced discipline, awareness, and cohesion among the inhabitants. This was not a society of passive caretakers. It was a civilization in which guardianship was a disciplined practice, a sacred duty, and a sophisticated exercise in environmental and social mastery. The psychological dimension of Machu Picchu's design cannot be overstated. The city was crafted to create both awe and confusion, deterring outsiders while guiding insiders. To those unfamiliar with the terrain, terraces appeared as natural slopes, stairways led to dead ends, and pathways twisted unexpectedly, masking the true scale and complexity of the city. For the Guardians, this manipulation of perception was a form of power, allowing them to control movement, maintain secrecy, and safeguard knowledge without confrontation. The city itself became a protective instrument, a silent guardian in which architecture, landscape, and human skill converged to ensure survival. Machu Picchu's invisibility was as much a psychological strategy as it was a physical one. Agriculture, ritual, and observation were intricately linked in this system. Terraces provided sustenance while concealing movement. Water systems nourished crops, maintained structures, and facilitated ritual cleansing and offerings. Observation points allowed guardians to coordinate activity while remaining hidden. Rituals aligned with celestial patterns not only reinforced spiritual practice, but ensured that agricultural and strategic activities were timed precisely. This interconnection illustrates that Machu Picchu was not a collection of isolated structures or practices, but an integrated, multifunctional system. Every action, every path, and every observation was part of a larger orchestration of survival, secrecy, and harmony. The legacy of the Guardians is also a legacy of knowledge preservation. Machu Picchu was a repository not only of resources but of wisdom, astronomical, agricultural, architectural, and ritual. Knowledge was passed down through initiation, training, and observation, safeguarded by those entrusted with its care. The city's secrecy ensured that this knowledge remained protected from external threats, allowing the civilization to maintain continuity and resilience even as the Inca Empire declined. The Guardians' role extended far beyond maintenance. They were custodians of culture, strategy, and human ingenuity, preserving an integrated system whose brilliance continues to inspire modern scholars, architects, and travelers. Emotionally, Machu Picchu resonates because it embodies the dedication and discipline of its guardians. These were people who understood the stakes of their work. Every terrace maintained, every stairway concealed, every ritual performed was an investment in survival, secrecy, and sacred harmony. Their labor was invisible yet essential, their vigilance silent yet effective. The city's endurance is a monument to human capacity for foresight, adaptation, and devotion. Machu Picchu reminds us that civilizations are preserved not only by strength or conquest, but by intelligence, discipline, and careful stewardship. The city's enduring mystery is also a reflection of the Guardians' mastery over time. For centuries, Machu Picchu remained hidden from the world, its knowledge obscured, its secrets intact. It was only with rediscovery in the 20th century that outsiders glimpsed its scale, sophistication, and beauty. Yet even today, many aspects of the city's purpose and function remain a subject of study and debate. This ongoing fascination testifies to the depth of the Guardians' design. They created not just a city, but a puzzle, a sanctuary, and a system whose subtlety defies immediate comprehension. Machu Picchu continues to challenge modern understanding, forcing us to appreciate the intelligence, strategy, and devotion required to maintain it. Ultimately, Machu Picchu stands as a testament to human potential, the potential to harmonize knowledge, devotion, and strategy to create something enduring and extraordinary. The Guardian's legacy teaches that true protection and survival are not achieved through force alone, but through observation, intelligence, discipline, and integration with the environment. Machu Picchu embodies the convergence of multiple domains: engineering, astronomy, agriculture, ritual, and secrecy, into a unified system. It is a city in which every action has purpose, every stone has meaning, and every hidden path contributes to a larger orchestration of life and survival. As we reflect upon Machu Picchu today, the city asks us to recognize the unseen labor, foresight, and intelligence that shape history. The Guardians, though long gone, continue to speak through terraces, stairways, temples, and observation points. They leave us with a profound lesson. The most enduring achievements are those guided by foresight, discipline, and devotion. Machu Picchu challenges us to consider not only the visible traces of history, but the invisible forces, the strategy, knowledge, and care that allow civilizations to endure. Its legacy invites awe, reflection, and humility, reminding us that human ingenuity, when aligned with purpose and harmony, can create something timeless. In the final analysis, Machu Picchu is more than an archaeological site. It is a living chronicle of human vision, intelligence, and guardianship. Its enduring mystery, preserved through centuries of foresight and devotion, teaches us that true legacy is not measured solely in stone or ritual, but in the careful stewardship of knowledge, environment, and human potential. The Guardians transformed a remote mountainside into a sanctuary of survival, spirituality, and secrecy, leaving a city that continues to inspire wonder and reflection. Machu Picchu is a testament to what can be achieved when human insight, discipline, and care converge. A reminder that the unseen hands of Guardians, though invisible, can shape history in ways that endure for centuries and continue to captivate the imagination of generations to come.